Yeah.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the January 5th meeting of the Litchfield School Board. I'll call the meeting to order and we'll start the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes.
Great.
Well, we're taking off the music thing.
Oh,
I mean, it's been, I apologize. What you see is the updated version. So we did trim out a couple of things, but we'll hit those
Okay.
as we go through.
okay. Summary of non-public actions from December 15th, 2021. Mr. Burke made a motion to approve the non-public minutes of December 1st, 2021. Mrs. Hirschberger seconded. The motion carried 5-0. Mrs. Harrison made a motion to accept the nomination of Christopher Jamrog as Director of Technology at a salary of $93,500 prorated from January 10, 2022. Mrs. McDonald seconded. The motion carried 5-0. Mrs. Harrison made a motion to authorize the superintendent to enter into an agreement between New Hampshire Energy and the Litchfield School District. Mrs. Hirschberger seconded. The motion carried 5-0. Mrs. Harrison made a motion to authorize the superintendent to sign the LEA MOA as modified by the school board. Mr. Burke seconded. The motion carried 5-0. Mr. Burke made a motion to ratify the LEA tentative agreements for 2022 to 2024, signed on November 2nd, 2021, and December 11th, 2021. Mrs. Ames seconded. The motion carried 5-0. Mrs. Harrison made a motion to seal the student issues section of the December 15th, 2021 non-public minutes. Mr. Burke seconded. The motion carried 5-0. So next on my list, we have presentations and recognitions. GMS music program was scheduled to present to us, but the instructor is sick, so they'll be joining us at one of our March meetings.
That's
Is
correct.
that right?
Yep.
Okay. So that brings us to the CHS Program of Studies.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
Do we sound muted over the? Okay,
No.
awesome, great. So, we began working on the program of studies back at the end of November into early December. Sort of started scratching out pieces and seeing what looked good, what did not look good, what changes we're making for the upcoming school year. We sent that information out to the curriculum facilitators and the Unified Arts Coordinator to say, hey, what changes do you have? They submitted changes. Some of that was related to the PERC program to make sure we had appropriate things approved through the school PERC program. And we're at the point now where we submitted a first draft. Apologies for the confusion. Wasn't our intention to make this more challenging for you folks, that's for sure. Having said that, we think we've got a pretty comprehensive collection of courses, ideas for kids in terms of programs and required credits and all those types of things. So having said all of that, I'm going to let our new counseling director, who's 7 months in on the job, just start talking about some of the specifics of the program.
Yeah, so apologies for any of the confusion that happened. We sent out the edited version that was to be edited, which was last year's version. And then we sent you what our new vision is for the program of studies. It's jazzed up a little bit, got some color, got some pictures.
Looks nice.
It looks really
Yeah.
great, right?
That's,
So huge thanks to Michelle for helping me with that because it takes a village. So it's beautiful. Granted, we still need to go through all of this with a fine-tooth comb. So I appreciate everyone's comments and they will be fixed. I promise you that.
and I'll say, as a former English teacher, they better be.
Yeah. Yes, and they will be fixed. So
Yeah.
have no fear there. And I apologize for any confusion that may have happened. Our graduation requirements have stayed the same. A few new courses. We're not going to be offering history of hip hop anymore. That has been replaced with History of American Music, which is sort of all encompassing. I think students are going to be super jazzed about that. No pun intended.
I was going to say, nice.
But I do. I think they're going to be thrilled with that. The social studies department is really excited about it too. So I think that's awesome. We had 2 math name changes. That really, it was just a name change to encapsulate what is actually being taught in the course. So it helps to line that up a little bit better. And then another new
The
course.
description changed on those? Sorry.
It did
that was
not.
one question. Okay.
No, it
so,
didn't. The
okay.
description was the same. It was just
Okay,
matched
got
the
it.
title to what is actually being
Okay.
done.
All right.
And one of the pieces of that is the previous name for the course really didn't get kids interested in knowing what was going on in it, because
Sure.
oftentimes they look at a course name and they don't look at what are the contents.
Yeah.
Right.
But if that course name is a little bit more descriptive of what they're actually going to be engaged
The
in,
marketing
they're
there.
going
Yeah.
to see that it's a little bit higher level stuff than what they
Yeah.
may have anticipated in their course.
Right. And I think it really does offer that opportunity for those students that need that math requirement, but they're not planning on going into like the sciences. So it's really for that humanities kid who is like, I know I need this math requirement. It's not my strength. I'm going to go be an art major. I'm going to be a social studies major. I'm going to be a psych major. So it gives them that exposure, but not having to like dive into calc or
Right.
AP stats.
AP stats or something like that. So it really does allow the pathways to sort of line up a little bit more. So that's exciting. And then effective communication is another course that was presented by our speech path, which is great. It really is geared for all students. It's going to be, sort of recommended by us in the counseling department and case management through special education. So it's a nice semester long on how do we write formal emails and how do we
Adulting skills.
adulting dialogue. So I think it's really good.
Is that considered like a unified class?
It encompasses special education students and traditional education
Excellent.
students. Yep. So that's exciting. We did, I don't know if you noticed, but we did flip civics and econ was a freshman requirement, and we flipped that to junior year and put US history freshman year requirement instead. Really, it just makes more sense. I mean, you look at schools across the state, a lot of them have civics and econ as a junior year requirement and not a freshman year requirement. So it was sort of a logical.
So we'll continue where the 8th grade left off.
Yes.
It's not going to do the same thing.
No.
Okay.
It really, the middle school social studies
Yep.
team and our social studies team have really done a nice job at really kind of
Awesome.
aligning that and stretching out their
That's
time
great.
periods and making sure that like
Dive
There isn't
deeper.
that
there
crazy-
isn't that like double cross.
Yeah.
And it's a nice 2-year progression, I think, from the 8th grade.
Yeah.
It also helps out with when we get to standardized testing, as far as like understanding how to dissect text, right? And like reading comprehension and how to read historical documents and that sort of thing, which is really what our standardized testing is geared towards. So I think that will be, I think that's a nice switch. So this doesn't impact teaching because we won't have civics and economics next year. So our teachers will be doubled up in who our US history teachers
Oh, I
are.
see.
You know what I mean? Because we won't have,
all of
no one will be
all
taking
of our
civics.
kids.
have already taken it or,
Yeah.
so, so
Half
those
the
are
school's
sort of,
taking US history.
What's that?
Half the school's taking US
Cool.
history.
yes,
Yes, correct.
basically,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So those are the biggest changes, big picture. And like I said, still need to go through this with a fine-tooth comb. But really, we were just kind of making the changes in the old one to transport to the new one, and then formatting. And formatting will all be the same, and charts will look the same, and it will be streamlined. We just needed to jazz it up a little bit. Like this is like, and not everyone gets a hard copy of this. I think that's the other important thing to remember. We were giving it just to 8th graders, but I'm not sure if 8th graders even really need a hard copy of it, where it's a changing document every year. Is that something that do I need to print maybe 30 copies,
No.
right? And like, I don't know.
I really think we need to give the entire 8th grade body. And that's just sort of my long-term 5 years in, 6-year in.
Yeah, I like paper too, but
Well, right, but I don't think the upperclassmen necessarily
No.
need that. They see it as an 8th grader coming
the
into
freshmen
9th
force
grade.
out there
And
Yeah.
then,
career anyway, so.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. And the other piece to that is, I'm not sure how many of them actually look at those course descriptions really carefully.
Right.
Which is why we're going to have an electives fair coming up,
Mm-hmm.
so that the kids have a chance to talk with the teachers in science, math, and unified arts and
Yeah.
do those things. But the other piece to that is, they can look at it online and find it online, but they don't have to have a hard copy of it. And I'm a hard copy guy,
I am too.
but I think for the 8th graders, they get the familiarity then 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, they can do this electronically.
Reading the course of study is not for the students, for the parent anyway, so.
Yeah.
Well, correct,
Right? They don't want to like,
absolutely.
Yeah, especially freshman year when everything is pretty
Yeah.
much just prescribed for you.
Do you know what I wish we had is like a worksheet that shows, like today I was trying to think how many honors class my son took to
Mhm.
meet the 15 distinguished.
Mhm.
And I have no
Like
idea.
one sheet that just has all the courses
Well, I
on
could
it.
fill in the classes he's taken or just to
We could probably.
I can get you.
and
Yeah.
well, that and even for other parents, and what's the other, New Hampshire scholars? There's a certain formula
Yeah.
that I know the guidance counselors are on top of, but I had no idea.
There's that other piece too, is that every year when the students sign up, they use just one sheet of paper.
Yeah.
That's what you sign up for
You're
the
absolutely
courses,
right. Yeah.
Right? So you can see that, but that changes because next year we won't have, say, AP Physics and we won't
We're
have.
flipping, yep.
So we have to change that around a little bit, but you can at least track that because the 8th graders actually, all of our students fill that out as a
Yeah.
as a
Yes,
sort of
the
prior
paper comes to our offices. Yes, and I thought there was. Nope, thinking of a different.
Some of you with younger
I know what
kids.
you're saying, Liz. Like for
Thinking
my
of it-
master's, I literally had one piece of paper and it was like, what are the requirements? And I marked
Yeah.
which class was part of which requirement.
Yeah, and I thought that there was a
And I
worksheet,
kept it for
a 4-year worksheet in here. I did. I thought there was a 4-year worksheet in here. I think I'm
Including
thinking
one
of a
would be
different
helpful.
program of studies.
The other thing that I found really helpful, and I think they were in there previously, was the flow chart. Like when I remember when we were going into 9th grade, it was kind of, these are your 2 choices for freshman science.
Yeah.
And there was no real rationale behind it. It was, if you get recommended, you're in this one. If you don't get recommended, you're in this one. And, come to find out, well, we might have been better off with another track because now we have to follow this pathway now, and that doesn't
Right.
necessarily apply. So I think having those flow charts.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they
That's
are
all these
in the
schools.
new one.
I feel
They
like
are
they
in the
are,
new
yeah.
one. Yeah, because I'm looking at this old one and there was not a flow chart.
Yeah,
But in the
it's
new
just
one-
really helpful.
In next year's, there is one that says like,
Yeah.
if you take honors bio as a freshman, this is sort of the direction that you can
Right.
go in. If you start in this level math, this is sort of the direction you can go in.
Mhm.
And obviously there's flexibility within that. But no, I really thought that there was a worksheet in here, but I guess not. So we will make one and put it in there.
There's a 4-year planning chart.
That's what I'm
not a
thinking of.
Worksheet.
But it's not even in. It's not in this
It
last
was
year one.
It was formatted
the
differently in
graduation
there than in the new one. In the new one, I broke it out into a table.
Right, but it's not. Yeah, it's not.
It's a
I
little
don't
different.
even see it.
I feel like it should also be a standalone
Here it is.
standalone piece. So yeah,
Yes,
that's the
is this
part,
what you were
but
something you
for
were
that they
thinking
can
that you
write
can
in.
actually write in?
Yeah.
Yep.
Or we could just simply add that.
Or print it out for their parents.
Yeah. Well, I was already been thinking about like 8th grade parent
Yeah.
night.
Those
and
of you
like,
with younger kids, you need to get your kids' transcripts because it gives you a discount on your insurance.
yes, that's
Which
true.
the
That is
McDonald
true.
family is in desperate need of.
Well, when they start driving,
Yeah.
right? I'm like, I'm having
Yeah.
then you let me
It's
know.
a substantial savings.
So,
Yeah.
so for tonight's action, this is really the summary. We need to have the PERC recommendations approved. If the board's ready to do that, if that comes recommended. Then our expectation is that we will come forward with one polished program of
Yep.
studies
Yes.
for you to vote on the 19th. So you're
Yep.
gonna have one link in there, but if you approve the PERC stuff tonight, we'll incorporate that in and you'll get one last look
Awesome.
at it. And it will be linked the Friday before the next meeting. So you'll
So I
have that
think
time.
last year when we were given the course of studies, one thing that was missing, if I'm not mistaken, was at the end, just giving an entire listing of all the changes. I know within the body they highlight it, but it'd be nice to have like a sheet that lists
Okay.
each of the changes.
So, Ms. Nelson, if you can just do a memo to the board that says the following changes have been incorporated and,
Sure, I
page
can-
8, this, page, whatever,
Sure.
and then it's nice and clear right on
Yep.
the cover. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yes.
Perfect.
And
Thank
I
you.
know they'll be highlighted within, but it's nice to
Just to have a quick look.
Yeah.
And
Got
they
it.
won't be highlighted within because they'll be,
It'd be,
That's gonna be
it'd be,
the
They'll be
clean
already
copy,
fixed.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Thank you.
but that summary
Oh,
will
it just,
right up front. will
Perfect.
help you out.
we need to get,
Yeah. Okay. I did
Um,
have a question about for those classes, I know that hip hop and I think the other one,
History of world
Yeah,
or
the-
American music.
college prep math. I think both of those were not NHIAA approved, right?
NCAA approved.
NCAA approved.
yep.
So the new ones I take,
Correct. Will
Are
not be
still
NC.
not.
Correct.
and then what about the new class that is being proposed? Is that
No.
No,
it's not?
No.
Okay.
And we just put that because NCAA regulations are so strict that it's important when students, if they're thinking about going on to athletics like that, they know what NCAA approves and does not. So
Yeah.
Right.
and we ran into a challenge with that 4 or 5 years ago with the student who was just when I was coming in, who had a single course, met his graduation requirements, and that was a course that we had to fight and kick and scream to make that athlete eligible to participate in track, I believe it was at the college level.
Wow.
So we
They're
have to
very
be
strict.
really careful
Might be
about
to
that.
helpful
state
to
it all
have
up front,
under
an
the
asterisk.
classes that are not eligible, just to have like an asterisk that this is not, under each course description, just have
I'm
that.
not sure if that's in there. But it's
well,
not a
it says
bad
if they're, it says if a class is not, if it's not listed, it's
Yes.
assumed that it is
Yeah.
approved.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, it's there.
They
Yeah,
are
yeah.
listed
Yeah.
within the NCAA section, the
Mhm.
names of them. So
Yeah, and then
actually-
under each course, like if you go, I believe, if you go
language
like
course.
to the course, it will say
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
like for the requirement one.
It does. Underneath the prerequisite, it'll say, no, this is not a
NCAA required course. Yeah.
Because a lot of
approved.
kids do take college math just as a big review. That is good to know
Yeah.
for your kids.
Yeah, but if they have three, like for NC, just quickly, like if they have 3 years of a math and that's their fourth, as long as their 3 years of a math were NCAA approved courses, they're good.
Because they have to have algebra 2 to graduate, correct?
Correct.
So there's algebra 1, geometry, and algebra 2.
Right.
Yeah.
And those are NCAA approved courses.
Got it.
And I'll go through the NCAA approval courses, these new courses to put in. You should have to submit, syllabus.
So the board will continue commenting and suggesting, and is that okay? And then
Yeah,
let us know when you're done hearing our suggestions,
I'll just
and we'll vote on
check
that.
them
when
off.
it's-
Next. Yeah.
My suggestion is to comment on the links that you have here, where
Mhm.
you've been commenting, keep commenting on that, because that's what
Okay.
is being used to drive the changes. So
Yes.
I think
Is
Make
the
them
new
here.
Did
one
on this one.
better to comment on?
It doesn't
The colored
matter
one.
because
Okay.
it
We're
doesn't
gonna
matter.
double check
We'll
both of
track
them
it.
Okay,
either way. Yeah.
I have
That
my
one is just
track
showing you
changes
that's all
on
used
so
to
I can see.
okay.
And that's the
I'll
work
have an
document.
outline
Yeah.
of it from.
And I'm double
Yeah.
checking, like, I
Can
mean,
you-
yeah.
Can you
Uh-huh.
guys like
I had, like,
send us
15
an
comments.
email when you're done making your
Ye-
changes
yeah.
in advance of the meeting?
Oh,
yeah.
Just so we have an opportunity to look at it again.
Absolutely.
Because I've already looked at it.
January
Yeah, I'm gonna
1st,
look
and
at it
I
one
just
more
looked at
time.
it today for the first time.
Tara, the next agenda, the January 19th agenda,
Yeah.
you'll get a link on.
And that will be
Friday before.
it.
That
Like,
will
that
be it.
will be
Okay.
Okay,
be-
that's good to know.
Okay.
Any
perfect.
errors or corrections or
Okay.
anything, it's gonna be
Okay.
perfect.
Good.
Say
Great.
final.
Yeah,
Thank
it's gonna
you
be
for that.
perfect. No pressure.
So I'll make a motion to approve the PERC recommended course changes for integrated geometry and algebra 2 with trigonometry and American music.
A second.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, abstain, 500.
Great.
Thank you.
And that
Thank you so
included-
much.
Thank you.
Did
Thank
that
you.
motion
Thank
include
you.
effective communication?
It did.
Again, apologies for the confusion.
Oh, do I need to approve that course?
Oh,
Yeah. those are
You
two
didn't
courses.
approve
Yeah.
She already said it.
Yeah, I remembered
Your motion
something about
includes-
that. I have like,
Okay, I make a motion, sorry,
I'm sorry, I thought it did.
nope, I make a motion to approve the new course, effective communication.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
500.
Thank you for
I
that.
remember seeing that. My hearing is going.
Right, that brings us to community input.
I don't know if I should bring it up now. It's gonna be.
You just need to state your name and address, yeah.
My name is Curtis Sampson. Probably most of you know my name at this point. I live at 12 Garden Drive. I don't know if now would be the time to talk about it. I wanted to discuss December 17th and the events that happened with the school system. I don't know if the board is going to be presenting anything tonight to discuss the events on a basis. If that's the case, I'd rather listen to what the board has to say before I come up with any comments.
Okay. So there's another community input at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, and I saw that. I got the agenda. So if you guys are going to discuss it, then I'll just wait for the
It's
end.
listed under superintendent's comments. So that will be actually right after input and correspondence.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for community input? No? Okay. That brings us to
Wait, you gotta check the Google.
Check the Goog.
oh yeah, check the Google.
not gonna do it, though.
And we have student representatives here tonight. You want to present your report?
Crickets?
Crickets.
Mike, it's not crickets.
We got an announcement through the school board that they're offering scholarships for school board students who offer. So keep that in mind. I was going to send your parents emails, but I thought I'd announce it here.
What was that?
Scholarships for students who work with the school board. That was one of our
Oh
emails.
yeah.
Awesome.
I sent that over to guidance.
They'll know.
That's a new scholarship the NHSBA is offering this year. So,
Yeah. Every bit counts.
Yeah.
All right. So we just want to give a little bit of a report of all like the activities that student council and the students kind of did over the month of December. It was a really busy month, especially for student council, and we did a lot of fun things. So the first thing we did was student council Christmas caroling. That was on December 15th at the Canberra Community Village off of Pinecrest. So it's like a 55 and over community. And they knew ahead of time. And so it was kind of like a Halloween type thing. They left their lights on if they wanted us to go, and we did. Yeah. And so we went around and we caroled, and some of the student council members made some ornaments to give to them. So they really enjoyed that. It was a really fun time. And Mr. McDonough had like hot chocolate and stuff for us after. But yeah, so that was really fun. We wanted to mention that.
Great community outreach there.
Yeah, it was really good.
And that's a poster that one of our student council members made for the 4 days of Campbell. That's our Spirit Week. We had Cozy Day, which is wear your PJs, North Pole versus South Pole, which then upperclassmen dressed in winter gear, and then the underclassmen dressed in like more tropical gear for South Pole. And we had Blizzard Day, which is wear your way, and then Ugly Sweater Day.
And then that's just a picture of us on Ugly Sweater Day. So we just let me throw that in there.
Did your principal win?
No.
Oh
no, Mr.
pretty
Mr. McDonough.
Yeah, he had pictures of him with a Santa hat all over his shirt.
Did Perez wear a suit?
No.
What?
Oh, that was classic.
Did
He
earlier.
wore it at the basketball game.
Yeah.
He didn't wear a suit.
He
though.
sure
But he
did.
made an announcement saying that there was an ugly, like the ugliest sweater contest. And so he made an announcement saying Mr. McDonough's was the ugliest.
Pretty ugly.
It was really funny. And so then we also had like the annual teacher holiday breakfast, and we couldn't do this last year, so we were like glad that we could do it this year. So that was on December 23rd, so the day before break. Yeah, so we just got a bunch of food for the staff, and we got there. We had to be there at 6:30 in the morning, and we set everything up, and we were there probably around till like 8:30, just cleaning stuff. And then we also caroled for the staff, which wasn't great, but we tried our best.
Oh, yeah.
Then we had our annual door decorating contest that ran from the 14th to the 23rd. So each advisory was able to compete and decorate their door. On December 23rd, I believe in the afternoon, administration went around and voted on all doors. And Senor Giampaolo's advisory won, and his is one at the end over here.
This one?
Yeah.
That's him, right? Like this?
Yeah.
Yeah, his hands.
My advisory, I've been bragging about it. Yeah. And then we just had like a few shout outs we wanted to give. So two seniors, Liv Pilcher and Elena Montanaro, they did a really good job with the Vlogmas tradition. I guess it isn't a new way. That was a typo, but so it's basically like videos throughout the day. It's like a vlog. So it's like a blog, but in a video form. And so those are really fun. They were posted on the Campbell Instagram. So Liv Pilcher is like really into filming and the editing, so she did that part. And then Elena Montanaro runs the Campbell Instagram page. for a senior project. So they would post those daily, and it was like really fun to watch, and everybody really enjoyed it. And it was a big hit.
And we also wanted to give a shout out to the Campbell Student Council with their flexibility and approach to quickly changing situations. I know we had a few times where things changed kind of.
Yeah,
on
and
the
we had
fly,
and then so Mr. Perez organized the Silent Night boys basketball game. I don't remember. I don't know if anybody was there. But it was really cool. So basically, what happened was it was like a Silent Night Christmas theme, and we all went in Christmas gear, and they were trying to bring back the Campbell culture. And to be honest, like this was the first Campbell game that was like a basketball game that I've really seen a bunch of kids go to, and it was really fun because like I've never experienced that personally, like at Campbell.
You're right.
So
The
it was really,
juniors, you're right.
yeah, and so it was really fun. We all wore Christmas gear, and we were supposed to be silent until a certain amount of points. So when it's the
6
game,
points?
6
Yeah.
points. So when the game started, we would like score, and nobody could cheer or do anything. But when,
painful.
yeah, it was weird. And so then once it got to 6 points, we all went crazy, and it was really fun. So Mr. Perez did a good job organizing that.
We want to give a shout out to the student Campbell.
Matt Grieco.
Yeah. He's doing the main lobby TV and getting all the announcements on the slideshow and posting every day.
Is that where the pictures went?
The big, yeah,
Oh,
the
yeah.
yeah,
We had
that
that
was
one,
really
yeah.
funny. That was really popular. So yeah, that's all we have. But
That's great.
I'll give a quick update.
I'm glad you're getting a taste of what Campbell used to be like before COVID.
That's awesome.
We'll get there.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Great report and presentation. All right. Just realized I'm not on the school board version of the agenda. Any other comments or public input? All right, with that, I will close this session of community input.
Billy's online.
And we will have
Thank you.
another one at the end of the meeting. Correspondence?
There is
Oh, there
another one.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, did you want to say anything at this point? Okay. All right.
All right. So correspondence, we had several correspondence. I just want to preface by saying some of these are pretty lengthy. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of an abbreviation of what the content of the message is, and you can go and check them. They'll be posted with the minutes. Our first correspondent on 12/17 was from Pete Stone. And he had great concern of how we handle the TikTok threat. He is not for remote days for snow, but says we should have gone ahead and done a remote day on that particular day, and concerned with the staff not being prepared. And he says he's not Monday morning quarterbacking because he mentioned this on Facebook the night before. On 12/17, we received from Meg Leon Guerrero just a quick note of appreciation on how well our execution was handled at CHS. On 12/15, we received an email from Will Henderson, very upset of failure to communicate clearly and effectively. He had a situation at LMS. He expects to be notified of situations involving his children. And with regards to his son, the school was unable to reach him at the time. And on 12/16, Mr. Henderson, still frustrated they did not reach him. They should have the correct numbers. And Dr. Jetty on 12/15 reached out to Mr. Henderson and said that the number that we had on file would not accept messages. On 12/29, Jim Norton was requesting that we consider masks for the first 2 weeks with the soaring numbers of cases, and many that are vaccinated are getting COVID, so he'd like to keep the kids in school. And Tyler Matthews sent an email that he would like read into the minutes. I'll read that into the minutes. Let me first start. This was on, January 2nd. Good afternoon, Dr. Jetty and board. Let me first start by stating I certainly have disagreed with various aspects of protocols over the last year and a half, but by and large, the district has done a good job keeping the kids in school. Speaking for myself, I've been tolerant as we learned more and more about the virus. Having said that, I'm going to need more in order to comply with these very arbitrary rules which are being put in place. I like analogies. the one that comes to mind is the one from The Simpsons. Bart and Lisa were playing rock, paper, scissors. Bart thought to himself, good old rock, nothing beats that. Well, we keep using rock, and I've had enough. I still believe the only study performed about mask effectiveness was on the onset of COVID and the original variant. Some may realize this, some may not. Delta is 40% more contagious than first. Omicron is 70% more contagious than Delta. Yet we still think masks would be effective based on a hunch, I guess. Look at the side of those disposable mask box. As long as they're not from China, don't think those have that sort of liability note. The sides will have a disclaimer. The mask, excuse me, does not protect against virus. We're not proven to protect against disease. Why do you think that is? Instead of a mask, let's put clown noses on the kids' faces with little fans blowing air away from their mouths. That has as much reasonableness as a mask mandate. If mask mandates are effective, I would like an explanation on why COVID is running rampant around the areas of the country with such mandates in place. Masks would curtail positive tests if they worked, wouldn't they? Vaccines have been out for a year now, readily available for everyone who wishes to have one for the last 6 to 9 months. We are told the vaccine works, so if that's the case, pandemic is over. If people are sick, don't feel well, they should stay home. If people feel fine, they should go to work, school. It is that simple. I will leave everyone with this thought. All available information, real information, not news media, suggests Omicron is much more like a cold, which is great news. It's itching the nose, throat, and windpipe, not the lungs and prior variants. That being the case, and the vaccinations available, which reduce the severity of the illness, what is our limiting principle moving forward? Can a concerned parent in February or November of next year request masks be mandated because flu is going around? What about a bad cold? That ends when people say enough. This person is saying enough. We have followed along with no changes. A virus will get the location spread, and simple as that. You can't control it, not even with good intentions. I say this all respectfully as possible, understanding that doing what you think is best, what is best for some is not best for others. And I'm tired of having to do what makes others feel better, just so they feel better at the expense of my family. Time to do what is best for my family as well, for the mental well-being of our kids, as nobody is bringing the mental anguish and educational issues, especially at the lower grades, we are creating with these policies that have not proven to be effective in controlling anything. And that's it. Then on our 7th one was on January 2nd, Jim Norton. Thanked us for continued commitment to keeping our kids and staff safe. We are extremely lucky to have you looking out for our kids. On 1-3, Tyler Matthews again. Thank Dr. Jetty for the links. Sent about mask use, but calls it's stale information. And mask studies with original variant, inquiring if LMS and GMS will follow the same guidelines as CHS. On 1-3, Deb Leary, concerns of quarantine guidelines. Vaccine. Huh? Oh, you didn't? I thought I went to everyone. Well, she's concerned as far as guidelines for vaccinations, whether you're vaccinated or not vaccinated, because it can still be spread. And the last one on 1-5 from Leanne Romano. She'd like to remind the board that a mandate for this so-called vaccine is illegal. The approved vaccine is not available in the United States. Look it up. Speaks to the fact there's no liability if you get one or not. Wanted to remind everyone of the Nuremberg Code. She said to look that up too. Then she talked about her visits to the hospital, that there was no COVID overflow. We should not choose field trips that require vaccinations. So hers was lengthy also, so you can check those. And that's it.
Thank you, Brian. Did
Yeah.
you forward those to Michelle?
They all have them.
Great, thank you. And those will be put in the minutes.
Yeah.
All right, that brings us to superintendent comments.
Thank you. I'm making one more link that I just want to make sure the board has available to them. So I'll just liven it up here. So I want to start by debriefing the district-wide evacuation. So I'm not going to kind of reiterate what I've already communicated to the public about the events of that day. I just want to bring the board up to date with what we've done since that day. And so the very next opportunity that we had to sit down, which was the following week, because this was a Friday, we sat down with our emergency management team and had a debrief session on that. So we brought together everybody who was involved. It involved the school administrators, the police department, the fire department, and the rest of our team. Now, keep in mind, our team meets monthly, so we religiously meet on the first Friday of the month. We have a meeting scheduled for this Friday. We'll be sitting down to further debrief the events from that day. So, but we brought the team together and we captured everything that we had heard from folks, so that we had a clear record of what had occurred, and really, what went well that day and what were some things that we need to work on and to improve and possibly work into our emergency planning. So we've had that first meeting and have recorded quite a bit of information. The link that you have includes every single communication I received from the community regarding that. The only communication missing is that of Mr. Sampson, which came in this afternoon. So that was not provided in advance of the meeting, but I'll get that copied and included in there. And then that will go forward also to the emergency management team when they meet on Friday. So they'll have his commentary also to review. And, I've also been in touch with Scott Lambertson, who is the school liaison at the Department of Homeland Security. And he and I have had exchanges back and forth and conversations just about our emergency plans and so forth. So, that's another piece that I've made that reach out to him, and we'll continue to debrief with our team on it. So, reminder to the board that really our emergency planning is not for public discussion in terms of the plans themselves. The last thing you want to do is have details of how you respond to things in the public sphere. We have a lot of great people in Litchfield, but if you have a bad actor who is paying attention, they can actually collect information from discussions. So it's important that we continue to have our emergency management team be the ones to work on the plans, and those plans are something that we rely upon in the event of an emergency. So by and large, the plan was pretty well executed on that day. The command center was set up. The challenges that we ran into are the challenges that I sent out to the community. It really came down to our ability to communicate, and we've made some adjustments. If we were to do that again, we've made some adjustments to the way we will communicate. So, but we learned a lot about the cell service available in town, and so we've got some planning to do, but we have some plans in place. Moving on to music concerns, I just want to update the board that we have found a retired music educator from the Manchester School District. She began today. She was at the high school interacting with the students. And so, again, that's important because we had parents here last time who were concerned. But this individual has come forward. I don't even know a name. I apologize. But Principal Lonergan said that she went right in. You could tell that she had been in the classroom 30 years because she was just right in par. Basically did some quick things on the piano, and then it was somebody's birthday today. Oh, Terry Taylor up in guidance, and she got the kids tuned up, and they went up and sang happy birthday to Miss Taylor. So, that is very refreshing, and I just wanted the board to know that. For enrollment for the month of December, if you take a look at the report, not a lot has changed. At Griffin, we opened. Really, our October 1st number was about 454, and we're at 455. So we've gained one student in that time period. At the middle school, we have also gained one student. And at Campbell, we started at 429. We're down to 426. So we've lost a couple of students there. So the overall impact on the district is down one student so far. I'll also point out that the chart that you have here, which is the one that you get each month, in the lower left, you can see that we're gearing up to start reporting on our kindergarten enrollments. And I'm sure that Principal Mitchell will fill you in on his plan to sort of roll that out and to promote it. But it's not too early for any parents who are paying attention tonight to, let us know if you got a kindergartner coming, because we monitor those numbers so closely, and getting them enrolled and getting them in the books is just absolutely important for us for planning purposes. So please be on the lookout for that announcement shortly, and we're going to start tracking that in February. I have provided the board with agreement summaries for the TAs that we signed with both LEA and LSSA. You had seen the LSSA one earlier, right? So it's dated September 1st. Remember that we had an agreement for the start of school, and the costs are provided to you, and the salary breakdowns are provided to you by each class within the agreement, and then the other changes. So that's a one-pager. And then the second thing that was compiled last week on vacation by our HR director, Holly Falzone, is the LEA breakdown. Again, the cost numbers are what you've seen in the warrant that's been proposed. And then the other changes are summarized here. And I wanted to make sure the board laid eyes on this. The budget committee has requested it. And my intent is to have it forwarded to them tomorrow so that they'll have it prior to their meeting. But we simply did not have this ready for the last meeting because we had just approved it the night before, so it wasn't summarized. And if you see anything in there that seems inaccurate, or especially the folks that were on the bargaining teams, if you have a whoops moment, let me know, because I'd rather catch it before we publish it and get it out.
What does added language on track changes mean?
So basically,
Sure they would know
the contract was silent on, so if you earn your master's degree, at what point do you move from the bachelor's plus whatever column to the master's degree column?
Okay, so like an education track changes then.
That's
Okay,
correct.
got
And
it.
what we found is that there had been practice as to how we had done that. We've now put that practice into the CBA. That way it'll be clear to all employees,
Yeah.
because we had employees who would come forward in October and say, oh, I got my master's degree last summer. I forgot to tell you, I'd like to be retro paid for that. And that was not the procedure. So now it's clearly laid out what the communication needs to be on that.
Yeah, I remember that. I just didn't know what the track changes was. Okay.
I do think that language is a little confusing, just because I think people consider track changes as the format on Word. And so we may want to put education track changes, just so people know we're talking about the
Sorry.
education track and
Yep.
not,
We can fix that.
but yes.
I have one other question.
On that, Doc?
On that, that doc. Convert personal days to sick days. I thought that was only this year.
Well, so two things. We negotiated that would be an ongoing practice. So that's now in the collective bargaining agreement.
Oh, okay.
So if a person at the end of the year has an unused personal day, it converts into a sick day for the following year. And then the organization LEA asked us to put that into the MOA and make it effective this year.
Okay, so.
And
that's
the
not-
advantages to doing that seem pretty high. So we went ahead and incorporated it.
All right,
So it's in both.
got it. Okay.
The same reason why the MOA had the new snow day language incorporated into it. There was one other thing that we incorporated that came out of bargaining. So once the parties agreed, this is a better way to go forward,
Yeah.
we said, then we could start now. And then the last thing to update the board on is the job postings. And I'm going to give you the link to this and hand this out on paper. Basically, Holly and I were talking about trying to make this as simple as possible for somebody to apply. We still have several openings across the district. And so Holly created the code, the QR code, right? So now when we post this, somebody can simply walk up with their device and click on it, and it'll bring them right to the application center that the district has available. So, if I'm handing these out, but if you stick this up somewhere, it'll make it really easy for somebody to click and apply. If anybody in the audience would like an application map, we have that available for you.
Think off my kids.
But you can see at Griffin, our current situation is we need 2 full-time custodians on the second shift, 1 food service tech, special ed paraprofessionals. I'll just note that it's plural because it's many. And we have Title I math tutor for 30 hours a week positions available at Griffin. And they are having a daily scramble of, moving staff around to try to make sure that everything is covered. At the middle school, they have 5 paraprofessional positions that have been open. They are each 6 hours a day. Happy to have people apply for those. Food service tech, there is 1 position. There's a long-term sub in special ed that will be needed from April until June. So if anybody knows somebody who can help with that leave, that would be a plus. And there's a second shift custodian part-time position available at the middle school. At Campbell High School, there are 4 student support program paraprofessional positions open. We also need a paraprofessional in special education. We're looking for a JV baseball coach for the spring and a JV boys lacrosse coach for the spring. And then district-wide, we continue to have an opening in our grounds maintenance position. That's part-time, 30 hours a week. That position's been open all year, so we need to get that one filled. And then we're always looking for substitutes. Teachers, nurses, paraprofessionals, and custodians are always a plus. I will say the sub-nurse situation has not gotten any better. We continue to operate with a full-time nurse at both the elementary and the high school, although the high school nurse is covering half a day at the middle school temporarily, and a half a day at the high school. So if we had a sub-nurse, it would be huge to help us out with that. So that's my summary for the board.
Any questions for Mike? Question about the cell phone tower at Dara and how that is intended to function.
It's not a cell phone
It's
tower.
not a cell phone tower.
What it, just for emergency communications?
Yeah, so the tower at Dara is for police radio and fire radio, so it's for internal communication, and it's sort of like a repeater, so it can pick up, send the signal to the base station, et cetera. So that's something that that during the evacuation was really beneficial to police and fire to be able to communicate. And then,
Get on it?
sorry?
Can the school get on it?
So that's part of the ongoing dialogue. Our intent is to join it, but there's an expense that goes with that, but that's our
sure.
intent.
And I heard that someone's looking for grants
There,
for it.
there are several grants that
Yeah.
we're pursuing. Yep.
Anything for safety.
So was there any discussion in the emergency meeting about cell phone coverage for the rest of us? Like all of us. Obviously, the emergency, that emergency tower is going to be critical going forward. But there's quite a few holes in Litchfield that I think were exasperated by that day. Yeah, exactly. So is anybody taking responsibility to reach out to Verizon or whoever manages the towers around here? Or is it a citizens inquiry?
So that's not something that emergency management has taken on yet. They could. Right now, we want to work on tightening up our ability to access the networks that we have and to use them to their fullest. But I think that would be something that people in town should contact their service provider if they were struggling that day.
It's good to know because I think they should.
When my husband had a problem when he was down at the Super Bowl a long time ago in New Orleans, he couldn't get cell service to call me. And he called Verizon and they explained what was wrong. I mean, he went off the grid for a couple days, but he was at the Super Bowl when we could actually afford to go to. He could go to in Louisiana, but he went off the grid. He couldn't get a cell out. So we could just call and complain.
Okay, so they just explained. They didn't
Yep.
say necessarily. Okay, but at least it's a registered complaint,
Right.
Yep.
Is that something that happens during emergency? Is that something that has happened in other similar emergency circumstances in different districts where there has been a large amount of volume of texting or phone calls where people can't get through? So I can say from my experience at the beginning of the start of the incident, I was texting back and forth with my high school daughter, but as it continued, nothing was going through. No phone calls, anything was going through.
Even to Dara.
To Dara, yeah. And then sporadically, all of a sudden, she would call, and I would get a you can come get me and, whatever. But I think it was just generally volume. And I'm just curious if that's something that other school districts have addressed as part
I
of
think
their.
part of it is volume, but also I think there's 3 spots in Litchfield that have the worst cell phone reception: CHS, LMS, and DARA.
Yeah.
They
Yeah, I think you're right.
all 3 have had terrible reception.
And no one's ever been over to Tabernacle. I've never made a phone call in front of BAE.
Right.
I don't know.
I think from what I've read, from all the feedback that we received, I think the number one concern was communication from the district out to parents. And I know there were some issues with that. I just want to make sure that that's a key focus.
That is an absolute key focus, and we
Yeah.
have a plan for that. In fact, we have a plan for that if it happened the day after, because we had immediate changes in the way we would act on it.
Great.
So, but we didn't know that was going to happen until it was happening. I just made an assumption that I could get a message out, right? I mean,
Right.
you should have seen me. I was like a lightning rod holding a phone, like going around, like I got to get a signal,
Yeah,
right? And
frustrating.
so, but we learned a lesson from that.
Yeah.
Has any other district ever evacuated this many students,
In
1,200
an entire,
students?
an entire district?
Yeah, well, yeah.
No.
I'm just,
In New Hampshire, I'm not aware of one.
That's what the fire chief was telling us
Oh,
at the
really?
meeting, that he says for as long as he's been on the job, he's never seen an entire district have to evacuate.
1,200
Not
kids.
so much the
plus
numbers, it's
staff,
not, it's 3 schools, the logistics of moving 3 schools and then getting them home. Are we in school board comments right now, or where are we?
Yeah, school board comment.
Well, I guess my question is, everybody knows our safety thing now, so do you know what I mean? Like if I was,
They know our safety thing from last time.
yeah, I know,
They don't know what our safety thing is next time.
exactly. Like everybody knows now. Is it a safe place to go to now if we're having something happen?
We've had discussion of a lot of other places
Okay.
to go.
And I'll say it again, Liz, they know what we did. They
Mhm.
don't know what we plan to do. So don't assume that we will do what we did.
Okay, I will not assume you will do what you did.
Nobody should either.
So we'll work on communication so everybody knows what to do.
Right.
And hopefully there won't be a next time, but
That's what
we'll
I
have
said.
that ironed out.
Yep.
But any other?
So
school
is the
board-
emergency management plan something that the school board members can see, all of them? Because I know the people who are on the emergency committee have access to it, but the rest of us do not. Or have.
You were given one at the beginning to vote on when we were ready to submit it to the state. We can get you a copy.
Michelle, do they vote
no, they do
annually,
one.
or they just,
Yes.
it's an annual vote? Yeah. So you
still the
have
process.
had it each August for approval.
Each August.
Yep.
Okay, I'll look back there. I
Like,
don't remember that.
we would remind you not to share it with anybody.
Yeah, I do not remember that coming through. All right, I'll check.
It's not gonna be that way next time.
Well, we'll see
I
if it
know.
happens.
Go through,
That's
like
why
I would
it
have
changes
remembered
every
that.
year.
That's fine. Any other comments? For
Yeah, I just have a couple.
Yep.
First and foremost, I think I just want to commend the admin team, the staff, and students for how they handle themselves and how they coordinated everything as quickly as possible and as easy a transformation as it was. And I know we talked about communication. Communication is really important, but I can tell you right now, I think all 3 principals at that time, and Dan's here right now, and I'm sure he can probably attest to it. His number one concern wasn't like reaching out to every single parent, it was taking care of his kids. Then it was reaching out to the parents. And I think most of us, at least myself, I get notification from my kids. They were able to reach me by cell phone. I mean, before I even knew what was happening. It's like, yeah, we're off to this school. You got to pick me up at this school. But
high school students anyway. I think, if you have a middle schooler or an elementary school, I understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
as important as communication is, I think the number one priority is making sure everyone was safe. So again, I think the staff did a great job and everyone involved. And I just want to touch base as far as the mask situation. I know people are still torn, going both ways. I just want everyone to remember that we're one of the few districts that have had kids in school from the beginning and maintained them. And we follow all the CDC guidelines.
Except
we
the
do.
5-day quarantine.
Which a lot of people aren't necessarily going with.
Yeah, that's true. It hasn't been adopted.
Is it true we
hasn't been
haven't
adopted
got
by
guidance
the
from the
state.
state yet?
Yeah,
We
exactly.
follow
Right.
DHHS
Yes.
guidelines,
Right.
right?
But I think we've done a fabulous job as far as keeping everybody safe. We have been monitoring it. We talk about it every single school board meeting. We have a dashboard that's out there for the public to see where we are as far as the level. And CHS has not had masks until now. And hopefully it will be just for 2 weeks and this will just pass us. And we have had conversations as far as GMS and LMS, what they'll do like in another month or two. And I just think that what we're doing is the right thing. And what we're doing is trying to keep the staff and the students not only in school, but also safe. That's all I have to say on that.
I can agree with that.
I want to say I would happen to be off on December 17th, and I went up to the high school, and Darapon was a great place to evacuate all the, and I worked at Campbell, and I know what it's like when we're all squished in that building. And they had like a relay, and it was so well run, and there were no kids freaking out. It was so well run at Dara. And I was so impressed. Everyone was calm. The kids were all calm. I didn't get to go to the other schools because I heard there was 2 schools at one place and I didn't want to add to any traffic. But I stayed with the administration. I brought a staff member home. It went really well at Campbell. But I was outside so I could get a signal. Actually, no, I tried to
It was
I
no
tried to
signal.
text you
Mhm.
and I couldn't text you.
I have T-Mobile. I had service, so I'm just saying. Love
Yeah.
T-Mobile. Yeah, I was actually I started out at Dara to try to see where I could help, and they had things under control. I definitely have notes on just little things, little tweaks that we can make to make things go more smoothly. And then I did go to where's LMS and GMS were, and you know, without the comms, I think both operations ran as smoothly as you could expect. And I think if we can get that communication, the walkies working, you know, streamline the reunification, I think we'll, again, I hope we never have to use it, but I think that will make, we have some improvements that can be made. And I think it was a unfortunate event, but, you know, fortunate in that it was a rehearsal, you know, we learned a lot from it.
Yeah, I know other schools are talking about it too. Like, what if this happens to us and what if it happens to that? We're a model. And you were right on top of it because I don't really let up if you guys notice. What are we doing now? Why wasn't this done? I don't even give you weekends off. I'm constantly going, why didn't we do this? Why didn't we do it went awesome at the high school. They even had staff in the parking lot. So it was like a chain down Albuquerque. So the kids couldn't even be fresh out in Albuquerque. They'd go straight and get into there. Couldn't go back in the school, get in the cars. No, just such a little kids are always so much more high maintenance, even at pickup. It can't.
I heard really good things though, from GMS parents and staff.
Oh, I
and
did too.
students about how the teachers were really,
Some of the kids thought they were on a field trip.
yeah. Right, it was
They were.
a fun outing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is too, no matter how many drills you do, until you live it real, that's when you're gonna find out where the problems are, and that's where we have the debrief afterwards. And I think there are a lot of things right now that we basically have talked about putting in place that will resolve a lot of the issues we have.
Can you answer who is on the emergency planning committee so people know?
Sure. So the regular reps are the 3 assistant principals. So that's
Okay.
part of their responsibility to implement the plans at the school. In this case, we brought the principals in because they also saw a lot of stuff happen
Yeah,
that day, right? So
absolutely.
they've been involved. Dan, you were invited to Friday's meeting, right? I'm trying to remember. I think we invited the principals to come this time just to continue that debrief, but then we'll go back to having it be the assistant principals. It's Corey, me, Michelle, representative from police and fire, and then Brian represents the board on there.
So the police and fire are heavily involved in this.
Yep.
Because I saw at the high school, there was a sheriff. And there weren't, I don't know what was at the other place.
There were
But-
police and fire.
There were police and fire, yeah, there was only a sheriff at the high school, which was fine by me. Oh, and a Litchfield police
There's
officer.
also state police.
I didn't see the
There
state
were
police,
state.
but that's,
There were
And fire.
basically,
They were there.
oh, yeah. Who said-
you know, anybody with a badge and authority who was able to respond did, and many of them were volunteers.
Yeah.
They just,
He's a postal inspector, and he said, I'm coming.
They just step up, they put the badge on, and they, what do you need me to do? They pitched in. So
Yeah.
it's pretty remarkable.
I don't want to be repetitive to a lot of the other comments, but I do think it's important to point out that to the extent that the public has any feedback, positive or negative, I think it's best to bring it directly to Dr. Jetty, to the school board if you need to, but really to Dr. Jetty, because social media isn't the place to, I think, to air the grievances about what happened that day. And if we want to have constructive feedback, if we want to have dialogue, I don't think anyone's here saying that the day went exactly perfect. They would do it again the same exact way. And
I don't want to do it again.
yeah, exactly. I don't think anyone's saying that. I think everyone knows there are areas where there is room to improve on. And if you have input on that, I would strongly encourage you to provide that input. I just think when it comes to social media, we're very quick to jump on there. It's very easy to criticize, and that doesn't necessarily always make it to the people that need to hear it. And again, have it be done in a constructive way, providing help, providing assistance, because I do think you want to hear the feedback.
We do, yeah.
I think genuinely we want to know what can be improved upon, and can't do that unless it's provided to us in a more direct way. So I would just encourage the public to do that. In terms of my observations, again, the staff, top notch. Every person I saw that day was calm, cool, collected, trying to play games. They were singing songs on the buses with the kindergartners. It was a fun, there were a few kids that I ended up escorting to parents, and they were, this is so much fun. And I didn't have to wear my coat. They were quite bubbly and excited. And again, and I understand that's not every student. And there are some students I think that may still be struggling with this situation. And I know that we're looking out for them as well. But again, I just can't commend the staff and administrative team enough for the way that they stepped up. There was traffic. There was some lack of communication, but those kids are all safe. They all made it home. Everybody was cared for. It was upbeat. It was positive. Snacks were provided when it became time to do that. I mean, everyone pitched in, and I was really proud to be from Litchfield that day. And so thank you.
You're welcome. And thanks for those comments.
If I can piggyback on what you said, and I think you said it to me earlier, if you have a child who is still upset about it and asking questions, I encourage any parents to reach out to your student's teacher, the principal or assistant principal, or the guidance counselors at your school, because for the kids that were experience anxiety that day, that can be long lasting, and we want to make sure that they get support when they need it. So thank you.
And thanks to the students who
rock
reported
stars.
it.
Yeah.
I mean, that is exactly what we asked for.
Right.
Yeah.
If I can do one other quick thing I forgot. So today was another bizarre day. I've never had a flash freeze occur to the extent that it
That was
did.
awful.
And I mean, I was on the highway. It was absolutely insanity
You were
out there.
driving during that?
I was. My car died last night on the way home, so I had to pick up the rental vehicle, and I just waived the insurance. I don't need that supplemental insurance. And then I watched a propane truck, not the little ones that come to your house, the big ones that go to the factory, literally go sideways on I-93 and crash into the guardrail. And I just thought, what is going to happen here? And it was insanity on the highway. So if you don't know, the town truck went off the road on Albuquerque just south of here and rolled over. It was, so all this stuff, sand came right off the back, and it was a mess. So the driver's okay, but that's why we were getting those alerts sent out, because it was absolutely nuts. And Bill basically stopped students at the door and said, nobody's getting dismissed. You're not going to the vocational, you're staying. And then called me to say, am I doing the right thing? And I said, I didn't realize it was that bad there, because I had called Barbara, and she says, oh, it's fine here. The sun's out. And I'm like, really? So anyway, it had obviously come from the north to the south, and it was just absolute insanity out there. So we held everybody, again, erring on the side of safety. I talked to Dan and I talked to Jen, and I said, tell staff not to go out, stay off the sidewalks. This is crazy what's going on out there. So We all made it through. And then once it warmed up and they had enough salt down, it's relatively okay. But again, we're trying to communicate that out to families as fast as possible.
The kids aren't going to be held accountable for missing class at Alvern because they shut down our schools. We weren't allowed to travel, and yeah, I just want to make sure.
So
No.
just one other thing with that. And again, I don't know when the notification was that the students weren't going to get on buses to go somewhere else, but students did leave school.
Really?
Yeah.
They should not have been leaving. So my understanding, and obviously it's only Campbell, right? Because I
Correct.
hope nobody's driving to the middle school yet.
No,
So
because my daughter came out, she goes, it's really slippery out there right now.
Don't you have
Like-
early release?
she may have made it out just before.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't know what the timing was.
My gut is it was because he became aware of it and immediately stopped people. So my gut is. she
But that's
just
what he
made
did.
it
That's
out.
the thing to do. Absolutely.
It was, but it was. I'm telling Barbara about it, and she's like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "I'm not making this up. I'm going to send you video of this. It's unbelievable what's happening right in front of my eyes." And then it was accident after accident all the way down. So crazy. Anyway, all right.
If that's it for school board comments, we can move on to the public minutes from December 15th, 2021. Do I have a motion to
I'll make a
approve?
motion to approve the minutes of December 15th.
I second.
Any questions or comments? All right, all in favor of approving the December 15th minutes, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? 500. And that brings us to Mr. Mitchell's principal's report.
And this is supposed to be brief.
Yeah, it is gonna be. It is gonna be brief because I had a whole performance planned, but the universe had other plans. But when I talked to Miss Magoon earlier today, I said next time I'm up is I think it's March 5th, and she said, "Oh, that's good because March is National Music in
yes.
Schools Month, so that'll be appropriate." So we will have the performance on March 5th. So. I did submit the report so you can all read, but I would just highlight a few things for you and as well for the public. First off, this was going to be my intro, but finally, after 20 months, the GMS chorus was finally able to perform again on December 9th, and I was looking forward to the small performance because I unfortunately missed it, so I wasn't able to actually see it. So I was looking forward to that. But chorus started at the beginning of the year with around 35 to 40 students, and each week for a few weeks there, the kids must have been telling their friends how much they enjoyed it because it kept increasing up to you got a chorus of third or fourth graders that's somewhere in the 70s. So it keeps increasing and it's going quite well. So it's chorus is back to full capacity.
Yay.
That's great news.
For pre-K, we did have our first child find event back in December. That is for any parent of any child, school age or even below, who is not enrolled, who would like basically an evaluation of their child. So that first one took place on December 2nd, and I believe we had 3 families who came. So yeah, it gets for any child between 2.5 and 5 years old. And so we have another one planned again in the spring. We hold that twice a year. As you can see, a lot has been going on in the grade levels, and you see all their reports, which you're excited about. And then finally, just a few reminders for everyone. We do have a 3rd grade field trip coming up on January 28th. A number of families also know that back to the last conversation, GMS was fortunate with the incident to have 3 buses on site, and because those 3 buses are about to take our 4th graders to the field trip to the State House and the State Museum. That obviously had to be rescheduled, and I believe it's been rescheduled to next Friday. What I can't say yet public is I know they've rescheduled the State House portion. I don't know if they were able to reschedule the museum portion to that because I believe it's closed on Mondays and Tuesdays. So they're working on that, but we do have plans to reschedule that 4th grade field trip, which I know many of those students, again, talk about 20 months. It's been 20 months since they've been going on a field trip, and there was energy and excitement that day, which turned into different energy and different excitement. But so we're looking forward to getting that rescheduled. But the 3rd grade will be going on the 28th to the Sea Science Center. So that's coming up. Second quarter obviously ends on January 24th, and so parents can expect that report cards will be available on the parent portal on the 2nd, the 1st, February 2nd, 2-1, not 1-2. Lego League will be starting soon, so look for in this week's blog for signups. And unfortunately, our volunteers or employees to coach was down a little bit this year, so we have to limit participation to only 24 students. So we're going to have open registration, and then we will have a lottery to choose if we go over 24. So just because of communication and it being dependent on parent communication coming to the parent's email, we didn't want to make it a first come first serve. We really wanted to make it fair for any student who wants to. So we decided that the lottery is probably the best and fairest way if we go over 24 to choose our 24 students. I'd like to publicly make a shout out to the PTO, who's done amazing over the past few months, putting on not only appreciation for teachers and over the conferences, but also the PTO very creatively was able to bring back the GMS holiday store. They utilized the large hallway space that serves no academic purpose. It really just serves to connect one part of the building to the other. I often call it the useless hallway, but it was very useful for a few days in December because they were able to spread the holiday store out. They worked with the teachers in the classrooms to come through. They had enough items for every student. Obviously, the ones that came first kind of got better pickings, but I'm pretty sure at some point there was just these mad scrambles to store to restock the shelves, if you will. But they did an amazing job. So thank you to the PTO. And that is all I have in my brief report. So any questions?
Questions or comments for Dan?
No, I think the kids were thrilled with the holiday store. I was able to volunteer for one of the days, and it's my favorite time to watch them, select and pick out the perfect gift for every single person in their family. And it's nice to have it back, to be able to do that again, because I know it was missed last year.
And way beyond their family too, because I love asking them who they bought it for, and it's their neighbors.
Oh, there might have been a few labels that I said to me from me.
To me from me. It's also like my
So they
neighbor's
could
cousin's
put the-
babysitter.
yeah.
Like, all right, cool. Hope they enjoy it.
Yeah, the kids are there. Some of them that were flashing 20s, they were ready to go. They were doing their shopping. So, but
Hey,
no.
can I ask you how you're holding the Lego League under COVID protocol? Like, do they share Legos? Are they together as a group? Are they 3 feet apart?
So they have the mitigation. So it's spacing. It's with everything else. I don't know. I believe each child gets their own kit. We were able to take advantage both last year and this year. First Lego League did a grant, so we applied for a grant for a number of the free Lego sets. So Kristen, but I know last year they did it remotely. So they were doing it as an after school Google Meet. We're doing it in person.
I'm
But
just trying to figure 24 kids. Are we still doing the
It's
3 feet
different
apart?
no, sorry. It's 24 kids, but it's 4 teams of 6.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's 4 teams of 6 students. So that's the spacing. It's not just
24 kids on
it's
one
not
day.
24 kids in one. Yeah.
Okay.
Small teams of 6.
Anything else for Dan?
Thank you. And I'll be back with the chorus. And
Yay. I love it. Easy goosebumps to hear them sing.
Sorry to hear about your dad, Dan.
Yeah.
Very sorry.
Let's see. We have the business administrator's update next, but he is not here at the
Yeah,
moment.
but I'll lead us
You
through
wanna go
the draft warrant part.
Okay.
I can do that. So I put up on the screen, or if you click on the link, first of all, Michelle and I learned how to do watermarked draft imprints. And so we worked one into, it's a new feature available to us in Google. And what this was actually feedback from a member of the community who felt that they should have been able to follow along at home, but we didn't want to post the original one because it was a work product.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, if we make it crystal clear to the world that it's a draft, we could probably be okay. So that, to me, if you look at that, that makes it crystal clear that we are working on a draft. So try to ignore that as we work our way through it here. But basically, Article 1 is the budget has been proposed and where we are with the budget committee numbers. Remember that the first number, 23,916,634, is the budget committee's number. That's where they are as of their last meeting and last round of voting. And then 24,184,241 is the default budget, and that is the responsibility of the board to set. And this is where we are on Article 1. So I think what we ought to do is actually pause and have Corey, since he hopped back in here, walk us through the default budget, because you can't approve anything until you understand where that came from. So Corey, do you want to walk us through the default calculation, how we got that number?
Yeah, so I provided in summaries before. I have a summary format that I follow that's in Google Sheets, but attached here is the state form. So it shows what was adopted on the MS-22 last year from the vote. And then it goes through each functional level, showing what the changes are. On the final page, it goes function by function, and it gives a description of what those changes are. So in most cases, they're impacted by increase in salaries and benefits. The discontinuation of the lease of the middle school modular classrooms is on there under function 4600. In a couple areas I have shown, such as in the 1100 function of regular education, that there's a net increase, but there was an increase in salaries and benefits, but then there was a reduction in our equipment leases, which is copy machines, laminator machines, things like that. Let's see. Under special services, a net reduction in salaries and benefits and out-of-district tuition based on enrollment, what we know as of right now, and an increase in contracted services. Transportation, that's the contractual increases for daily transportation. Those get taken into account. And then certain areas like single year appropriations, like the transfer to the expendable trust and things like that. And then in the CTE, there was a reduction in tuition, so the 1300 function went down. So that's everything I see in there. There wasn't a lot of one-time purchases in this year's budget because over the past several years, we've used fund balance to get after a lot of the things that we needed done in facilities. So those have been accounted for in use of fund balance and not the operating budget. Is there any specific questions on where we landed?
So I don't recall, but so the two bargaining agreements go into the default budget, even though they have not been voted on?
No, the increases and decreases in salaries and benefits would be related to current staffing.
Okay.
Because what we put in the budget for 22 would be based on 18 months before that, who was there at that time. So as we have turnover, you'll have people that are hired on a higher step or a track.
So those numbers aren't reflected in the total then?
Meaning? Say again?
So the two collective bargaining agreements, those are not in the total
They are
for
not
the
in the
23,417,000?
That's a separate article. Will have to be plugged in upon approval.
You'll notice the rest of Article 1 is that because of the reductions that the board took, this is resulting in a 29 cent per thousand reduction in the tax rate. And I added the comment over on the side to keep it running.
That's a function of revenue as well.
Yep.
There's a little bit more state revenue coming in, which is odd, but that impacts it. So that's where the net effect ends up with a reduction on the tax rate.
Any questions on Article 1? So moving on to Article 2. Article 2 is the collective bargaining agreement with the LEA. The dollar amounts that you see there are the dollar amounts that were reflected on that summary sheet. And so we do two things. We Sanbornize it by letting everybody know what the 2-year cost of the agreement is, and then we raise and appropriate the first year cost of it, which is the $351,187. If that's approved by the voters, that has a 29 cent per thousand impact. So it brings the overall warrant to that article at zero. There's no increased tax expectation if you approve Article 1 and Article 2. Any questions on 2? I think the board, I haven't heard anybody balk at maintaining Article 3, which is that if Article 2 were to be defeated by the voters, will the voters allow us to bring back, to renegotiate and bring back a special meeting with one article on it, and that is to offer a new settlement, right? So if the parties can agree to it. So Article 3 is something that right now we're showing the school board is recommending to the folks to have on there. And I don't believe the budget committee gets to weigh in on that because it's a no tax impact article. So they will be voting on Article 2, but they don't get to vote on Article 3. Article 4 is the same thing with the support staff agreement. You saw the summary of that. In this case, it's a 3-year agreement, so we Sanbornize it by giving the 3-year costs of that, and then we raise and appropriate the first year costs, and that has a tax impact of 8 cents. So on your running tally, we're now up 8 cents per thousand by including that article. And then Article 5 is the same thing. If it were to be defeated, would you recommend allowing the board to, or do you approve of the board having a special meeting to approve cost items of a renegotiated agreement? So, and we're showing that as recommended by the board. Any questions on 4 or 5? All right, so 6, this is where we're going to spend a little bit of time tonight because you saw 6 in a draft form before. It hasn't changed fundamentally. It's changed in terms of the value of it and what it's going to cost. And it's changed actually pretty substantially. And so I'm going to shift over to another spreadsheet and walk you through the numbers as to how we got to where we are so that you understand what we are doing. And just for background, Tina and Brian participated in a conversation with our consultants in terms of how the heck we got to where we are. And then Corey and I have engaged in further work with the consultants to try to nail this number down. So I think we've got a pretty good handle on where we are with it at this point. And I'm going to throw it up on the screen and walk you across it. So the very first thing is this sheet, which is on the completion of the LMS project. So the board saw at the last meeting that the overall the overall preliminary costs, and these are preliminary costs from North Branch, brought it to basically $6.1 million to do all the work that the board wants to do. And remember, this is the LMS project. So we're talking building renovations. We're talking about complete heating and ventilation renovations. We're talking about lighting and control renovations. And we're talking about bringing in renewable energy as the way that we will fuel the building for the next 40 years. So I point out the 6.1 million here because the bids are actually not due into North Branch until January 20th. So we're still 2 weeks out from when the bids are actually due. The construction documents have gone out. The subs have been notified of this. Joe Campbell is confident that we're going to get a lot of energy around this project because it's an exciting project for the contractors. So he thinks that, with all hope and likelihood that it'll come in less than that. But he's saying, I gave you a number that, you got to base your calculations on. So I'm telling you to use $6.1 million.
It was based on very limited participation from subcontractors because at that point we had not gone to complete construction documents, which have now been issued as of yesterday. So he's thinking that at this stage it will expand the pool of subcontractors that are going to be interested because now they have something solid to work with.
So the second number is the solar array and the energy storage components that are being designed into the project. and the cost of that is $1.4 million. And so that has to be added to the base cost, and it brings us to a project cost of $7.5 million, roughly. I want to remind the board that we had provided to you the last time some individual component pieces that if you were to really say, listen, how can we change the project scope and the project costs? And these were 3 potential items. I do not recommend them to you. I do not recommend that you take those. I feel that every one of them has tremendous value, and every one of them gets us to done. If we pull those out, I'm just afraid that we'll have leftover pieces that we're going to have to then keep in mind versus getting the project, getting the middle school buttoned up and finished would make sense in my mind. So the 3 are the foundation insulation. So remember, that's insulating the entire slab. That's absolutely essential toward achieving the energy reductions that we're trying to achieve. It's $105,000. The kitchen, which has been on the 5-year plan and is approved on the capital plan, it's something that's been talked about for a long, long time. This is our opportunity to do that work. And we think that that's coming in at about $375,000. And then finally, the locker room renovation, which is the ability to take completely wasted space. Those locker rooms are just sitting there, locked in the core of the building, not being utilized. This allows us to renovate them into 2 classrooms and 2 smaller locker rooms, so that teams and students during PE class will be able to use them if they wish. But it's really an opportunity to reclaim that part of the building and to make it into usable space. And frankly, the 2 classrooms will be tremendously valued by all students in the building. So we recommend that all 3 of those be left in. You could take a reduction of slightly less than $1 million if you cut those out. But in the grand scheme of what we're talking about, I think that funding those through makes perfect sense. So in the meeting that we had with Brian and Tina, we pushed back on some of the assumptions that we could make relative to finding some additional savings. We think there is money to be found in the mechanical, but we just can't assign a dollar amount to it at this point. If there is money to be found, it's going to come in through the bidding process relative to the project, but we're not prepared to recommend a reduction to the board relative to mechanical at this stage. We think that in the electrical, there is an opportunity to value engineer about $50,000 out of the project. And so our goal is to focus on that and to achieve that. We believe that the bidding that comes in is going to be about $250,000 less. So we're taking that assumption at this point. I'd love to see a number that makes that even higher and we could take more out. But all our team in meeting with this, we feel that $250,000 is a fair assumption of what we can pull out of the project at this stage. The microgrid valued at $1.4 million, we're going to pull out of the project. And you're going to see in a minute that we've come up with an alternative funding formula for this. And so we'll explain how that ends up working for the community and for the board. But we can pull that out. So microgrid is basically, instead of being on the main electrical grid and buying energy from Eversource, we will have the solar panels on the roof. We will have a battery backup system that charges during the day and supplies energy at night. And that becomes a microgrid. That doesn't mean that we're snipping the wire to Eversource, because we're still going to have that connection. But the microgrid will operate in tandem with that. And, essentially we're buying power from ourselves instead of buying power from Eversource for the most part. There'll be a little bit of an energy bill at the end of it. Thank you. You're welcome. And then the last thing is, what funding, grants, and revenue can we identify that will not have to come from the tax dollars, that we can literally is already in pocket or in hand and we can apply toward this project? And we're saying that $733,000 is money that we have identified. So if you read across line 17, how do we get to 733? We know that ESSER 3 has provided us a grant. That's federal COVID grant. It needs to go toward improving the COVID situation or better arming us against future flus and viruses. And so that's money that we have, and 80% of it is earmarked toward ventilation. That's the dollar amount. We know that the town has collected impact fee money that is available for the middle school. We've asked for that $44,378 to be made available from the select board. But that's money that the town has, and we want to apply toward this. And we think that, we know that the use here qualifies for how to use that money. And the last thing is Corey and I are recommending a capital reserve transfer of $150,000. So this is money that the district has built up over time. And we'll explain to you in a second why we think $150,000 is a fair amount to transfer from the capital reserve and apply it toward this project.
That's from the facilities maintenance capital reserve, not the capital improvement expendable trust.
How much is in that fund right now?
We're going to get to that.
We'll get to it.
Yep. So this adds up to basically a reduction of $2.4 million. So when you take that number and when you take the project total at 7.5, you deduct 2.4, you end up with a project to be financed at $5,066,140. And that ties back to the warrant article that got us talking here, right? Because in there it says to finance that amount through a municipal lease. So now let's talk about how did we land on that and what are the other assumptions that go into it. So first of all, let me use my cheaters here. There we go. All right. So you'll notice that in the school building maintenance capital reserve, we have $289,106.08. That was the balance in June. And it probably has earned more interest since then. So there's a little bit more than that in there. We're recommending 150. Why do we feel confident in doing that? So a couple of things to note. At LMS, you now have a new roof. So that's the kind of rainy day project that you save the money toward, but you have the new roof that's been buttoned up, so you don't have to worry about that roof, right? This project will replace both boilers in that building. Those boilers are aged. They are, potential risks that you have at your fingertips. And by coming out of the building and no longer being necessary, you're avoiding probably $100,000 in replacement costs for the boilers at the middle school. So
Not to mention repair costs because of the inefficiency of them.
exactly. So, our belief is that taking 150 out of that, because then you're left with, and here's the gamble and the risk, you're left with Campbell, which is in fairly decent shape. Griffin is tired and anything could happen at Griffin, but we're also gambling on having a successful bond vote in another year. So it leaves a little bit of money in case there is a whoops that takes place in the next year. It doesn't deplete it to zero. You're spending a little more than half of it, but it seems like an appropriate amount that you could put toward this project so that it brings down the overall cost of it. So that's how we came up with 150 out of 289.
And we could also have another vote in a subsequent year to replenish some of those funds to make sure we still have.
And then you see in red the ESSER funds and the LMS funds that are available. So those are the $3 amounts that add up to the 733. You were going to ask a question.
I was going to ask a question. I understand the thought of using our capital reserve funds, and that's what they're for, but why not take it out of the capital improvement fund? Because these are improvements.
See, I think the issue with that is that we're going to need a majority of those funds to deal with the architectural for GMS.
Right.
So I think this is more of a maintenance and repair type thing that we're doing. I think it's better to come at that capital reserve.
I see that. My concern is that something happens at GMS in the year or 2 years, waiting for things to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's something to consider.
Mm-hmm.
But we've had the roof leak, we've had the breaker, basically go bad. I mean, things have happened in the last 2 years. The sinkhole, yeah. I mean,
Well, the sinkhole, actually, if you recall, like we thought maybe we would pull from the fund to reimburse that, but we ended up managing that through
yeah.
operating budget.
Okay.
So to Corey's point, there is the 821,000 there. We're sort of parking these in two buckets
Yeah.
and saying that's the new elementary school bucket. And do we have the ability to dip into it? Absolutely. You know, but we're looking at a land acquisition. You're looking at
Right.
civil engineering fees. You're looking at architectural fees. You're looking at a lot. And further on in the warrant, we're not asking the taxpayers to do that because we built that fund up.
Right.
So our sense is that we should not touch it toward the LMS project and reserve it toward the GMS project.
Ultimately, the board is agents to expend. So whichever way you want to,
Yeah.
there's discretion. But I mean, our feel, I mean, we stated what our feel is about the two funds. So
Yeah, absolutely.
On the funding sheet, I'll also point out that when the Public Utilities Commission eliminated the New Hampshire Saves program, these two dollar amounts, 180,000 at LMS and 69,000 at CHS, got put into the hold ether because that was money that we were counting on, but is now parked. If you read the news, you know, there's a likelihood that the legislature could actually fund that and it could end up coming back. And then we would just take those dollar amounts and apply them toward the project because it would be, those are rebates that we would get. And so that could be used toward the payments. But right now, we can't count on it because the PUC has taken it away.
What's the timeline on when we would know?
I asked that question of Dick because I said, all right, so if we knew by February 5th, we could offer an amendment to the dollar amount at deliberative. We could say, we're actually going to lower it by then. And he said, I wouldn't hold your breath. So
Yeah.
I was asking that question specifically, but we are talking about, you need a vote of the House, a vote of the Senate, and a signature of a governor. And so you're probably looking at June, not
Right.
February 5th. So, but I'd love for that to be like fast tracked and, you know, we could actually do something with it.
And you'd apply it to the original, not another project,
It would,
towards the
uh,
LMS.
LMS project.
so yes, that's exactly right. It would go, like the 733, if we got 180, we would increase 733 by 180 and there'd be less to raise from taxes because it would come from there. That's exactly how we would buy it. Yep. All right, let me talk about the solar because you saw us deduct $1.4 million and you're saying, where did that go? And I'm going to answer that question for you, I hope. So basically, our original goal was to purchase the solar and make it part of the funding that we were doing. Our consultants have found investors who will purchase, supply, and own the solar array. Okay. And then that is something that we will buy back from them over time. The annual payment to the investors will be $89,031. So basically, picture that instead of paying the utilities for the electricity, we're going to pay the investors back for the energy that they are generating on our rooftop, right? And we do that for 6 years. And so instead of paying Eversource or Burke Oil, we will be spending $534,186 in the current operating budget to buy power from the company, okay? And then at the end of year 6, there will be a lump sum payment of $375,882 or so, somewhere in that ballpark, as a lump sum buyout. And that's when we purchase the solar field from them. Okay, so we will buy all the equipment from the investors
In year 6.
in year
What's
6,
the lifespan of a solar?
20 plus. So what we will have spent is a total of $910,068 toward the $1.4 million solar grid, okay? Because it's the sum of the 534 and the 375. So between buying power from the investors and then buying the residual value of the array, we will have spent $910,000 to realize $1.4 million. So saving about $500,000 on the operation. And the question is, where did it go? Like, how can you get that for that less money? And the answer is that the school district as a municipality is not eligible for any federal tax credits that are available for solar production. Private investors are. So if they purchase the material and then they apply for federal tax credits each year, that's how they're making their profit, by gaining from those federal tax credits, and they're passing some of that savings on to us by selling it to us at that reduced amount. So the investors will make their money. They'll take advantage of the federal tax dollars that we can't take advantage of. And in the end, we land exactly where we need to be with the solar production on our roof owned by the Litchfield School District.
For $500,000 less.
And save $500,000.
It's hard. Yeah. Okay.
It's all gonna be on the roof, right? There'll be nothing on the ground.
Well, Liz, I think they're going to put, we've talked about one demonstration cell on the ground, maybe over by the,
Is it gonna be fenced off or anything?
well, they actually want to put it over by the music room, I believe, and then it would be used for students to go out and to monitor and, yeah. So it'd be
Oh, right.
educational. But most of the solar field is on the roof, out of sight. Well, I shouldn't say out of sight.
Whole wheeling that goes on behind our house. It makes me nervous. Not my kid. Seriously.
So what's the risk in this? Is there, I mean, can investors pull out? Can what it, you know?
I believe it would be a contract between us and the investors, much like a what do you call it, a
PPA. This really is a power purchase agreement. And so it's all written by the attorneys. It, spells all this out. It's not unlike buying a car or any other expensive product. You're just saying, here's what it is. This is what the annual payments are. And then there's a lump sum payment. The one thing I'm going to point out about this is that lump sum payment of $375,000, which is an additional $62,000 a year, we do have to plan toward it. We can't wait till year 6 and then say, oh, we got to find $375,000. So we have to have a plan to be setting that money aside, or designating one of those funds to say we're not touching that because that's where it's coming from.
We have on the capital plan $125,000 per year going towards those trust funds. So we could do that, and that would, if we get that approved each year, knowing that this is the goal, then we can easily cover that out of a trust.
And then the yearly payments we would cover with the existing payments that we're paying to Eversource and Burke Oil.
Yeah. So on the
So that's like 90,000, 89,000.
Yep.
Yeah.
How much money will this save?
Time.
Oh, is that in the next page?
But wait, there's more.
Okay.
So when you take the dollar amount that we have to finance, which is the $5,066,140, and you look at a 20-year municipal lease at 2%, which is current costs, it's going to be a $307,545 payment that has to be generated. We looked at, well, what if we only finance it for 15 years? You're at $391. And, it just feels like we're trying to get this as responsible as we can without causing tax spikes. And it just felt like that was asking too much. But I want to ask, I want the board to realize we have that dollar amount. And if you were to say to us, we don't like 15 years or 20 years, we think 15 years to get it paid off faster is better. That's the impact of that. So I will also point out, because our recommendation is to go for the 2% amount, because we think that's the banks have said plan on 2%. That's the right amount to use for your calculations. But keep in mind that the Federal Reserve has already said you're looking at probably 3 interest rate increases in the next year. So if you don't do this project now, and then we're still buying oil with price increases, electricity is going to spike, by the way. If you didn't get your notice from Eversource, it's going up. It's going up this month. So, 2.5% drives you from 308 to 322. So we just left that number in there because, waiting is just going to add to the cost of the overall project.
So that's what the district is paying out every year.
That's how much we will have to pay to pay back the $5 million loan. Okay.
Okay.
So now,
Ask me about the amount that we're currently paying to Eversource and oil and all that.
so coming over to the cost of avoidance screen,
Okay, that's what I want.
right? So basically, electricity savings, we're predicting $64,000 that we're not paying to Eversource and that come from this project. Oil, which is completely eliminated, results in $49,000 in savings. So we have $113,000 in cost avoidance. In other words, that's what's already in your operating budget. So you don't have to raise and appropriate it because you already have it. It's in the operating budget because right now, if the voters say no to this, you have to pay for those things next year. But if you stop paying for those things next year and you get them out of there, and by the way, I'm just going to point out, the oil tank has failed its inspection. The state has given us 1 year to get the oil tank out of the ground. So, if this fails, then what we're going to say is, okay, now we got to dip into that reserve. Good thing we have the 150,000 that we didn't put toward the project because we're going to have to put a new oil tank in the ground, and we're going to have to use that money to do that. So that's how dire the situation is there. So it's really
It's a good time to move
a
on.
good time to sort of invest in the
The
future
boilers
of
aren't
this.
in great shape either.
Right.
So your annual payment of 308 minus the 115 leaves you having to raise and appropriate $195,000. And that $195,000 is the warrant article. So remember, it's got the two parts, the 5 million overall, the 195,000, and that has the estimated tax impact of 16 cents per thousand. And I had said to Corey, so on a $500,000 house in town, what does that mean? It's an $80 tax increase for essentially a fully completed, buttoned up middle school ready for the next 40 years. You're talking roof, windows, all new lighting, all new heating, all new ventilation. Everything is done in there. The only thing, I'm just going to say this right now,
Parking lot.
we haven't touched the parking lot, right? So the parking lot and the underground drainage is something that we'll have to continue to struggle with. But the building itself is buttoned up and, will be serving us very well for many years to come as a result of this project. So let me pause. That's a lot. Questions or comments or thoughts on it?
Thank you for walking us through
Yeah.
that.
I do want to note the total amount has come down significantly.
Right,
It was initially 6.8 million
right.
we were looking at on the warrant, and a lease payment of 250, appropriating another 255,000. So we've made the adjustments. Now that construction documents have gone out, hoping the bids come back and it's more favorable and we can bring something forward. So we're working really hard on this thing, and thankfully we have this team of consultants that just know how to. We even have one of the consultants that walks us through things as well and actually clarifies some of the stuff that Dick and Dave are telling us,
Oh, nice.
which is great.
Is that Kay?
That's Kay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Yeah.
they know what they're doing, and I think matching us up with the investors is a smart way to do it. And this investor has a vested interest in seeing schools go solar,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So
So
that's where someone mentioned, where does the risk lie? And in my mind, it lies with the investor because we'll be under contract with them. We have no control over tax code, credits code, what you don't know what the government's going to do with those energy credits. So it's very favorable for them right now. 4 or 5 years down the road, depending on the administration, you really don't know. So I think the risk lies with them. Huh?
You only need 6 years with the investors, though, right?
6 years.
Yep.
The other risk is that, so you say, well, what could go wrong with it? If we own the array, and let's say the array didn't produce what we wanted it to, then we have to make up the cost difference by paying Eversource more because we're drawing more off the main grid and not the microgrid. But the investors are guaranteeing us that. So their job will be to ensure that the grid that gets built is correct because they're getting 89,000 a year. And if it's costing more than that to supply, then what they're going to have to do is take that out of their profits. So everybody, it just makes it so that everybody's got a more vested interest, I think, in the overall project. The other thing is, if you approve Article 6 as written, we have to take this forward to the Budget Committee tomorrow and explain the rationale for it. The Budget Committee is already a little bit nervous about municipal leasing versus bonding, right? So that's a concern that they've raised.
I thought they've used that type of funding before themselves. I thought
They
that's
have,
what.
the town has.
Okay.
They think that although that I shouldn't speak for them, what I've heard is that The municipal leasing has not been done by the school district, so they believe bonding is the tried and true way for the board to fund projects in the district. But this, as you heard from your attorney, clearly falls under the realm of the board's prerogative to decide how to fund it. And it's absolutely, this is municipal leasing. This isn't, you're not building a new school where you're paying for bricks and mortar. You're paying for equipment, and it's totally able to be done under municipal leasing laws. And if January 20th, the numbers were to come in lower, because at some point we got to publish a draft warrant and get it out there, right? I think on the floor of deliberative, so you get two more bites at the apple. If they come in lower on January 20th, we could actually amend it before the legal posting date. We could have an emergency meeting. We could change that warrant article and say, Mike and Corey, rework all those spreadsheets, and we put a different number in as the overall amount, and we put a different number in as the financing piece. So you could do that. The other thing you could do is, let's say that we had other things that occurred. You could offer the amendment on the floor at deliberative and say the board reduces this by X amount, and you could make that motion right there on the floor. So it's not carved into stone. It's, but we need to get the red draft out of the background here and get it into something that we are comfortable bringing
So we
forward.
don't anticipate that number going up at all, and even it would
You
only
never
be to
know.
reduce that.
I think everybody, Corey, you correct me if you're wrong, but I think everybody's been conservative. I think, even some of the assumptions we're making, I guess it's possible that we overestimated some assumptions and we might have to increase that. It's always a possibility,
Right.
but I think,
Not very low.
I think the assumptions people made are conservative assumptions. So it's more likely that it will go down,
Okay.
but I won't make a bet with you on
Can't
that.
promise.
There are
I can't
things in
promise
the,
that.
the initial proposal or the initial estimate from North Branch. There's some areas where Joe Campbell put in an allowance for a certain thing because he didn't get a bid in that particular area.
Okay.
So these things are
It's gonna tighten up.
it's gonna tighten up.
There was, if you watched the last budget committee meeting, there was discussion just about the contractor, about North Branch, and, why have we not gone out to bid to get a different contractor to come in? They did the first part of the project, but how do you know they're still delivering high quality, low cost work for the second part? And I just want to remind you, the nature of their contract is, that's their job. They work for us.
It's 2 phases. We signed them on for 2 phases.
And their job is to do this at the low cost. And they did it in phase 1. So somebody believing that they did it in phase 1 so that they could make up for it in phase 2 doesn't understand the way the contract works and the relationship works. So I feel very comfortable and confident that they're doing exactly what we've asked us to do at the best dollar amount.
And if I remember correctly, I believe North Branch's fee structure was better than the other ones that bid. So we would
It
probably, we got, I think, 4 or 5 construction managers on the RFQ. They were the best of that bunch. And I think we would probably get bids from the same bunch and probably get the same features that we've already seen.
Is it true that they were the only ones that did phases?
No, everybody
They
did,
all
but
did? Okay.
but they were really smart. They said, we're not even viewing this as two framed it. We think it's one project with one project. They really saw this as, two aspects to it, but one project going. So, Corey, correct me if you think I'm off base. I think there were 6 bids received. We interviewed 4, selected 4
That's
for
right.
interviews, and then we selected. So it was a very competitive process.
So do you need a vote on this tonight, or we're gonna wait another meeting to get more final numbers? And because there is another meeting before the 20th, I think, or the 22nd.
So the budget committee is voting on the draft warrants tomorrow.
Okay.
I'm thinking that if you had school board votes recorded on these tonight, it would actually help.
Well, this is just to put them on the warrant, right? This is not our recommendation of them. We do that later, don't we? Or is this?
Well,
I
we
think
can,
you send
we
it
can
to
amend.
You recommend,
Yeah, and then we would amend as these if this tightens up and it adjusts again, we would motion at deliberative session.
And depending on what happens at the budget hearing on the 13th.
Yeah.
And the actions of the budget
Yeah, we-
committee after that, the board can meet and vote again.
Okay.
Right.
But I do think I would feel more comfortable putting a document in front of the budget committee tomorrow that had your votes on it.
Yeah.
And not just Corey and I recommending to you what
Mhm.
we think. It's sort of the board is buying in at that
Yeah.
point. Anything else on Article 6? I'll hit Article 7, and then I think we have to go back and go right down.
Go right down and vote.
So Article 7, remember, you have two options to proceed on this. So we think it's important to put $125,000 into the capital improvement expendable trust fund. Remember, that's the one that has the 800 and some odd $1,000 in it, but the costs are high. And so we think, adding 125 consistent with our capital plan is important. Option 1 is that you could say, take the money out of this year's fund balance and put it in there. And we're fairly confident that we'll be able to find $125,000 by June. Remember, the risk of option 1 is that if we came out to zero, for example, that the money would not be there to do this, in which case it wouldn't happen. It wouldn't go in. But if you just keep in mind the number of
I was just gonna
job
say.
postings, we're
Positions.
not spending as much in labor as we should be. And so there will be guaranteed, I would say, 125,000 available at least. So the beauty of doing it out of fund balance is you don't have to raise and appropriate additional taxes. So it's not going to have any tax impact. And that means you will end your warrant with a 24-cent tax impact for the whole warrant if the voters support everything. Option 2 is to do it as an additional increase. So you actually raise and appropriate 125,000 from the taxes. That will cost 10 cents more per thousand, and it'll make your overall warrant worth 34 cents per thousand this year. And keep in mind, last year's warrant was 60 cents per thousand. So whether you go with option 1 or option 2, you're still around half or better of what last year's was. So, so that's the overall presentation. I think we go back to warrant 1 and take votes if you're ready for that.
Well, we need to pick an option for 7, right?
Want to do it when we get to 7?
I was gonna say,
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4.
All right, warrant article number 1, which is the operating budget.
I'll make a motion to accept the warrant as written.
To accept the warrant or to recommend it? That's the question.
Recommend it.
To recommend the warrant.
A motion to recommend Article 1 as written. And then, because I think we need a vote on each one, right, Michelle?
Yes.
You want it to say 500 or whatever it ends up being.
Okay, I'll second. All in favor of recommending Article 1, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? 500. Article 2,
I'll make a motion to recommend Article 2 as written.
I'll second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? 500. Article 3,
Make a motion to recommend Article 3 as written.
I second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? 500. Article 4,
Make a recommendation to accept Article 4 as written.
I'll second that one.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? 500. Article 5,
Make a motion to recommend Article 5 as written.
I'll second that.
It doesn't matter. One of us seconded it.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? 500. Article 6,
Make a motion to recommend Article 6 as written.
second.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? 500. And Article 7 for option 1.
Well, somebody should recommend either option 1 or 2.
On Article 7, I'll recommend option 1
I'll
as written.
second. All in favor, say aye.
You want to discuss
Aye.
it first?
Oh,
I
do you
mean,
wanna discuss it
I
first?
agree, option 1 too, but I just,
I think the amount of monies that we're asking for there's no sense in putting it on top because as Dr. Jetty just said, and I was thinking of myself about a few other things, looking at the openings we still have, looking at the openings we've had, we will have monies
Yeah.
that we can put towards this, that we don't need to go back to the taxpayers for more. That's my thought on it anyway.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I
on
agree.
Option one? Okay. So all in favor of recommending option one, Article 7, which will then be Article 7, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? All right, so we'll go with Article 1, option 1 on Article 7, and that is recommended 500.
So let me just thank the board for bearing with us while we got to this point. Before we share this with the budget committee, we'll clean this up in the morning and share with them. You know, they don't need to see option 1 and 2 anymore. They're going to see your recommended warrant with the votes on it. And so we'll get all that polished up and then share it with Chairman Cutter so that he can share it with the rest of the committee. So I appreciate you bearing with us while we walk through this. And if you have thoughts or feedback for Corey or me on the way we presented Article 6 to you, let me know that, because I intend to kind of walk everybody through a similar format, just so they understand
Tomorrow.
how we're doing this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just so they
I think the budget committee will get that, but I think the general population, we've got to somehow figure out how to make it more,
Right, and we'll.
I don't know, digestible.
Once we
pretty
have
clear.
that right, what I envision is producing a one pager that sort of summarizes this. Like, we know what that's covering.
Yeah.
John Q. Public doesn't, and we need to spell out exactly what this is buying. You know, what is it going to look like?
And what's the
Kind of.
benefit?
But it's true. I have a 22-year-old house. I'm just waiting for that boiler and air conditioner to go. We're waiting. We have money ready to go. It's going to happen one of these days. No one's that lucky.
40 years old?
LMS is coming on 40, so you know, the windows. I mean,
Mhm.
I was looking. So I'll just say this, but the high school windows are old wooden windows that you can feel the cold air. You know, it's like, but these new windows are just phenomenal in terms of how efficient they are. So anyway, excellent. So thank you for that, and thanks for bearing with us. The last thing on this, because Corey walked you through the draft and the budget draft, which you've now enacted with Article 1, right? So I don't know that we need to do it tonight, but the budget hearing presentation is next Thursday, right?
Really?
So yeah, I guess we do need to
Yikes.
do it tonight. We just need to think about the production of slides and who's presenting what.
Next week? Isn't it on a Saturday?
No, the
Oh,
budget.
that's-
hearing
Oh, that's
is
the
next
one.
week.
Okay, sorry.
It's deliberative.
I believe I thought that the budget committee always did the budget hearing
Yeah,
and presented
the budget
everything.
hearing is
The budget.
their show.
They do all the slides and everything.
Yeah.
But Andrew said at the last meeting, you get Article 6. I'm not touching it. I don't know if he
Well.
was serious or not, but
I would say yes.
I don't think we're really even involved in the public, in
Yeah.
the hearing.
not.
This
Okay.
is their budget coming forward.
Okay.
That's just show.
Yeah, not to,
No. Well,
Shoo,
let's
shoo, but
let's
that's-
just be prepared tomorrow when they're going through it.
Well, if he doesn't want to present it, then have Kerry present it, who suggested this a couple of years ago. This is exactly what we should do.
For less than what you suggested.
Correct.
Then the next thing is just to begin thinking about deliberative then. So on February 5th, you know, we've got to figure out who's presenting our slideshow and our presentation of this. And so I think what I'll do, if history shows, is Tina and I will work on it, because you sort of produce some, we supplement it.
if anybody else wants to
I
pick a
nominate
warrant
Tina,
article.
but if you need any help or
Okay.
want any help.
Thank you. Or if you feel passionately about one or more of the warrant articles, if you know, those of you that did bargaining this year want to speak on the benefits of the agreement, you're more than welcome to do so.
I'll take Article 2 if need be.
Okay, thank you. We can assign those.
Yep.
We can wait a bit on those. Okay, great. We have committee reports. You know, we talked about emergency management. Did you have anything else for that, Brian?
No, most of the stuff we already touched on. As far as the Monday morning GMS meetings, like our first one since our last meeting was on 12/20. Basically, we talked about resending and coordinating surveys from both sessions. We had a recap of the selectmen meeting. on the 5 points is because we presented to them. So we just recap that. You know, the possibility of either a rebuild, different piece of property, and just what our thought process was. We had a conversation with one of the selectmen as far as the cost of the road. That one of the selectmen felt that our estimate was very high, but again, I mean, we haven't sat down with an engineer or anyone else as far as exactly what the cost is. But with the people that right now are presenting and working with us as far as GMS and LMS, that's a rough guess on their part. That's about what it would have cost. And then, unfortunately, you know, it's all doom and gloom because you keep hearing about energy costs going up and up and up, and you know, we're hearing the mechanical costs are going to be up about 50%, and then the price of electricity or cost for electricals, is up about 35%.
That's a good time to switch to sustainable.
Yeah. And again, the emergency meeting, we had a big debrief meeting that involved, like I said, the admin teams, police, fire, school board. So there was a lot that was communicated, and I thought it was a great breakdown as far as what worked, what didn't work, what needs to work, and what we're going to do going forward. And we already talked about the whole thing with LMS because we had a meeting on that as far as outlining what Dr. Jetty just outlined. I think our last meeting, we just talked about different possible properties and locations for a school. Our last meeting on the 3rd for GMS, we talked about the community forum. For our next meeting, a summary of what we heard from them, try to put that out there, and just how we're going to present the next session. That's about it as far as those.
Budget committee met the day after our last school board meeting. We were presented with the town and the school district warrant articles, very drafty versions. And I will say there was some sticker shock, much like we were surprised to see the cost for Article 6. They had a very similar initial reaction. And then we bring them back tomorrow, and they will vote to recommend them or not recommend them. So there hasn't been a lot of progress in that, but we're meeting tomorrow. Did grading reporting meet?
Yes, it was like a 2 before break. And bites here and there. It's a long process, but getting there. Yeah.
How about Perk? We saw the name changes that came forward.
That was one of them. There were a couple other things up to Mary to talk about. It was
Okay.
about giving honors to honor.
Did Wellness have a meeting?
We did. We met on December 7th, and we have another meeting coming up. I think it's next week, January 11th, 3:15 to 4:15. We are looking for community members to join the Wellness Committee. It's going to be Learning Commons, the CHS. We looked at a dragon, and so that's going to be brought to the different schools to get their input on that. We talked about the 3 components of wellness, the physical, mental, and nutrition, and really looking at the policy that we currently have and updating that because it's very much focused on nutrition and some physical health, but no mental health. And, we started to look at some ideas of what could be done this year. Brought up the newsletter that Bedford does, and people like that idea, but don't want it to be too frequent because we get,
Weekly,
inundated with communication.
weekly is a lot.
On a weekly basis.
Yeah.
So we were even just thinking maybe just 3 times a year.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, quarterly would be
So,
great. Yeah.
we haven't talked about who's going to do it, or how it'll get done, but,
That's the next part of the conversation.
yeah, exactly. But, I think we had, 8 or so people there, and, Yeah, I mean, just some good energy and some ideas, and just excited to get this rolling again.
Great. And then the town capital improvement.
Suppose we're gonna meet in January.
Okay. All right. That brings us to old business with COVID situation.
Yeah, so just a quick update for the board on where we are and a couple of things I want to talk with the board about just in terms of our planning. So this is, wait till it loads up here. These are the December numbers. You can see that in the month of December, our school impacts really hovered in the medium range. There was one high impact at LMS. That was just relative to the number of students who were out that particular week. And then we had required masking in place throughout the month of December at GMS and LMS. LMS, if you look at the column, LMS sort of started the wave, and then we transferred down to GMS as the numbers trickled up there. So we remain at required masking there, and we are targeted masking at CHS. We ended the month of December at GMS with a grand total of 10 staff members and 34 students so far this year who have been COVID positive. And you can see the numbers again are kind of a makeup of the staff impacts and then the student absence rates, et cetera, that get us to where we are. At LMS is the building that's had the largest impact. And I point that out again because of the need to get this project done. Yeah. One thing I didn't say, because it's getting into the weeds, but now I'll say it. This project is going to ensure that there are MERV 13 filters on all the ventilation in that building. We'll be bringing 100% fresh air in, using high quality energy recovery units to capture the energy out as we bring the fresh air into the building. And the MERV 13 filters are the filter micron size that's necessary to capture viruses. So, whether it's COVID or the cold or the flu or whatever the next thing is to come along, it's really preparing that building to be a healthier building for both students and staff in the future. So in this case, we had 14 staff members so far to date and 68 students at the middle school who have been COVID positive. And you can see their numbers. At the high school, it levels back off again. There have been 8 staff members and 29 students. You can see this the only time that we see green with low impacts. We're at the high school. So the high school has done well. Admittedly, they have been not wearing masks, and yet, the reality is that that's got probably the better ventilation system of the schools in it. So it shows the importance of fresh air toward helping to keep everybody healthy. We ended, actually, I'll skip vaccine rates because I updated that in a second. There were no remote days that took place at the schools in January. So if I now click on to where are we right now, our current situation, and I wanted to show you the December data because January just doesn't show much yet.
Oh, see, I thought it showed a lot.
Campbell's like 3 to 4 times higher in terms of rates. Yeah.
In a couple days, it shows a lot.
Yeah.
It's not quantity.
It's not the full picture.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So let's look at GMS. You can see we've been hovering around the 15%, and we trickled over that today. So GMS has had a lot of cases. When I was at GMS on Tuesday,
That's why
the nurse is like a one-armed paper hanger trying to keep track of all this.
they're the unsung heroes of the nurses.
There's no
in
doubt
all
about it.
Schools.
And
Unsung
Dan and
heroes.
Maura were in the office, and they were taking turns taking care of the boo-boos that came through the door so the nurse could focus on the COVID follow-up calls and so forth.
Because that's a full-time job, taking care of the complaints.
And the other thing is, just the confusion created over the CDC issuing draft guidance, the state saying we haven't adopted it.
They
Now,
have.
Liz is saying the state has adopted it. I haven't seen that yet.
He said
So
he started contacting schools. It's not the fact, I get people are getting sick. It's the what's the word? Quarantine of people who don't have symptoms is what's killing us. Like there's a certain person in town who works for a district who has no symptoms, and he's not going to be back till next Tuesday, but he can walk around outside starting today.
So right now, until I get the official notice list, which I have not seen.
Oh, I totally understand,
we're-
but people are sending it to me.
Well, the commissioner called an emergency meeting with all superintendents on Monday at noon. I had about an hour notice of that. And there were 192 of us in that call, and he wagged his finger at us and said, you use existing guidelines.
Of
I don't want to
course.
hear about anybody who's modified anything. The governor has not approved anything yet. So
That's good
it's like-
practice.
and what was fascinating was we had noticed everybody on Friday, this hasn't changed, right? Remember the communication I sent out? There were superintendents in the call. Oh, I thought we could follow these new guidelines. And he was like, no, that's why I called this call. Get your act together. You can't. So I was like,
Well, I didn't
I'm ahead of the
understand that
curve.
at first too, but I understand if the governor doesn't approve it, we shouldn't and can't
And
follow
really,
it.
it's the DHHS guidance that needs to come to the schools. right?
correct,
Yeah.
correct. Now, I will say the nurses had a call at 3:00 this afternoon. My gut from your communication to me is that that's when the information went out. But I have not seen official communication
No,
on
that's
it yet.
fine. I just want us to be up to date on
Then
everything
you have
and
this-
not blindsided.
Yeah, then you have the CDC who just kind of backpedaled yesterday as far as saying, take a test after 5 days without saying take a test after 5 days, but you should take a test after 5 days. So
But we just prided ourselves about following the CDC rules earlier in the meeting.
then we are following the rules.
And HDHHS.
Yeah, we have said from the beginning of the pandemic, whenever there's a difference between it, we follow the local New Hampshire guidelines. We've done that from the beginning, and it's worked well for us
Yeah.
because I feel like, the feds are reporting out to the entire country, including Alaska and Hawaii, right? New Hampshire is over here saying this is what makes sense for us. And, so they can't go, what would it be, strict, or they can go stricter, right? They can't go looser than the CDC, but
Unless
they've
you
been
follow it.
pretty good about getting the information. So that's what we have paid attention to and hung our hat
Oh,
on.
that makes perfect sense. I'm 100% on board on all of that.
So those are the numbers at Griffin. The middle school numbers are not quite as high, but you can see that they are high. Now, somebody put high in here. That's not high, that's medium. So I don't know who did that. I'm gonna fix it.
I was wondering if it was staff
Yeah.
impact
Right.
because they have so
They
many
have 10
staff
staff
absent.
out. But they've had yesterday they were
It's,
11.
it really still should be a medium impact because it's based on, for the most part, it's based on this number. And the other thing is the staff. So when Holly and I talked on Sunday evening to see what she had received, and she went school by school and listed who she had heard from. By and large, it was like peripheral support staff. It wasn't classroom teachers. So I felt confident going into. Now, I said to Holly, this is who's noticed us today. It doesn't mean we're not going to get staff calls in the morning,
No, because it was New Year's too. Those cases haven't shown up.
but it was, our ability to run the classes was not impacted that much for Monday. And at Campbell, you can see that that number is creeping up. I mean, 8.5 to 10.6 to 13.4. That worries me a little bit. I actually asked Bill before I came up here. I said, "Can you please update today's numbers?" But what's happening is because his nurse is at LMS, when she gets back to CHS at 11, she now has to compile all that, start making the calls.
Yeah.
So the high school numbers are slower getting on the chart. They're slower getting on the chart because you got your nurse down at the middle school. So just bear with us while we work our way through it. That's
Any
why
idea
it's
when the middle school
lagging.
nurse is coming back, or if we can get a sub or
So
anything?
the latest word is that we're hoping for mid-January. So hopefully that will occur, but still having a sub nurse would be helpful.
Helpful.
And the nurse would
It's
be helpful,
encouraging
too.
that she's on the mend.
Yes, it is.
I saw her son.
I did the update to the vaccine rates. So a couple of things to point out. In the U.S., the Republic of Palau, which I'm not sure I could even find on a map, is doing awesome wherever it is. But Vermont is leading the nation in terms of its numbers, right? So 77.3% of the population is fully vaccinated and 48.4% are fully vaccinated and have received a booster dose, which is pretty impressive. The other New England states are in green, so you can see Rhode Island, Maine, Connecticut, and Mass are also right toward the top of the list. New Hampshire's a little bit further down. I've always thought of New Hampshire, Vermont, like the twin states, one's upside down the other, but 67.1 compared to the 77.3, and then 13.6 with the booster compared to the 48.4. And at one point, New Hampshire's booster rate was actually the worst in the country. We had the absolute lowest booster rate. This 171% is those booster blitzes that the state's engaged in. There's another one coming up this weekend.
Yeah. There are 4 sites, I
Those
think.
were designed to get a lot of boosters in the arms, and it has brought that number up a bit. I don't know that it's
Hampshire is 5.9% is the booster dose. Am I reading that correctly? 5.9.
10%.
13.6, I think.
You're on the-
Which chart are you?
You're on
Oh,
the
my
December
end
one.
of December. Okay, there it is.
Yeah, so it went
Yeah,
from
even
5. It went from
Okay.
5.9 when I know it was 50th in the country
Yeah. Oh, okay,
to
got it.
13.6,
Oh, yeah, I know, I see
which
it.
is the increase of 171. And then, so here they are laid out for you at the end of December, and notice Litchfield's number is still at 53.9. So we are behind the New Hampshire number a bit, but that's where our number lies at this point. For all remote dates, I want to report to the board that we had to cancel preschool this week. We had staff absences in the preschool program that made it impossible to run the preschool program. So I don't like to cancel the preschool program, but we had no choice. You cannot have 3 and 4-year-olds with one adult and be successful. That's for sure. So that's newly reflected on here, and it was for all 5 days. We're going to assess it again at the end of the week. I'm not sure if Dan told me it trickles into next Wednesday. I lost track of that, but we'll get our hands around that later.
I'm more concerned about kids missing 10 days of school. That is a long time to be doing packets.
Are you talking
Just in general, like canceling preschool is one thing, but 10 days on a packet isn't healthy for kids. Or
so
20.
two kind of follow-up things in here. So the preschool cancellation, let me hit that. Basically, the have had a couple of families reach out to say, well, we paid tuition for our children to be involved in the program, but it's canceled. It's not that we're doing even a remote preschool for a bit. So they've asked about a tuition reduction, and my gut is that they ought to have one. But I'm just curious what the board's thought is on it. So
to the extent that we can be flexible, and we have the ability to be flexible, I think we should. I will say that a lot of the private daycare, childcare situations, they are not being reimbursed when the daycares are closing down because of cases.
they are not.
You're paying because they still have to pay their staff. They still have the same expenses. So that's been a concern. A lot of people are paying for double childcare because they have to pay for the second childcare when their daycare isn't open. So I mean, to the extent that we can be flexible, I think we should be. But
So is there, we're still paying our staff.
We are still paying our staff.
Um,
I didn't realize that was the case in
Yep.
the private sector
That's-
world. So,
But this is public school.
but it's what families have opted for. They've opted for the program that we offer.
Yeah, I guess.
So
think
I
they
know
should get
that
some
at
type
least
of discount.
So
at least one inquiry
can
came in.
we offer something remote? I mean, we did it for last year.
Not if they don't have staff.
Well, I mean, that depends on
Yeah.
who the staff is. If it's,
Right, if
they
you
have a
just have one
who can
teacher-
still do something remotely.
That's against their contract, though.
If the board's sense is not to get into a tuition reduction and to challenge us to find a way to add value, then we'll go back and we'll talk about that. It's a scenario where I think some of the preschool staff they can't come to work, but it doesn't mean they can't work remotely. Those are two different questions, right?
Right.
And effectively working remotely with preschool is a second question,
Sure.
but we can certainly engage in that if that's what you want if you want to direct us that way.
again, I mean, I think in the private daycare situation, they have to have that income in or they can't pay their staff. I'm not sure as a district we have that same problem, especially given, as you said, the number of vacancies we have. Does seem to be some amount of money that we
Can we
have.
discuss that? Should we discuss that in non-public?
We can dig deeper into that in non-public if you wish.
Okay.
especially if you feel like that we're gonna belly up to.
I'd just like to know more about the situation and who
Yeah.
who can do
Exactly.
what.
That's the belly up part that
Yeah.
we should probably
Yeah.
hold up on. So, okay. So the second thing is I want to talk about, so the updated plan. So basically, I think we're all waiting to see what happens. I will tell you that we're going to double up on our COVID meetings. I don't know that we're going back to a daily COVID meeting, but our feeling is that the weekly COVID meetings at this point are not going to cut it. So we are going to increase the amount of time that our staff, our admin team gets together to discuss the numbers and what we're seeing in our buildings and the impacts. And, you know, none of this has gone in the trajectory. I want to remind you that a little over a month ago, we were talking about eliminating masks because of the vaccine. And now we're seeing numbers that are just more unsettling. So I don't know where it's going to go. We're going to know an awful lot more at the end of the 2 weeks, but the current trajectory that you're looking at is not overly promising. So what I want to talk with the board about is the concept of phased outages. And what I mean by that is that I agree with Brian. We've done a remarkable job of having in-person learning and keeping the schools open. But just like the airlines that can't fly when you don't have a pilot and you don't have the flight attendants, you know, we can't just keep faking it and putting more and more kids into bigger spaces. You know, I've heard from other districts around us that have had, you know, 100 kids in a gym being supervised by one staff member because that's what they can do to keep it going. That's not education either. That's you know, that's babysitting, to be frank about the term for it. So what I have asked the principals to think about is that if we went to a phased outage, so in other words, we announced to the public in advance on Monday, first graders, fifth graders, and ninth graders will stay home and have a day off. And that will allow the 25% of our staff who are not working with those kids to be deployed across the rest of the student body, so that instead of closing down and having remote, which might not even work if we have enough staff members who are sick, right? We might not even be able to successfully deploy remote, that we would be able to keep school open for the other 75% of the students in the school. I'm using middle school and high school numbers a quarter. That we would be able to keep that rolling and deploy the staff to keep the educational services going. So
Does
it's
that
just,
fall under their contract? Can they do that
can they be asked to teach?
in another building or another school?
They would stay at the high school. So you take the ninth grade classes would not be meeting that day because ninth graders would have the day off. And then
Would they have work to do on their day off?
they would not. It would be a day off. They would lose education. I want to be clear about that.
So they have to make up these days at the end of the year.
They do not, because we are over on hours. We're going to have to shift to an hours mentality to achieve that. You know, I'm comparing that against come into school and put a bunch of kids in the gym or the cafeteria or the auditorium because we don't have another option when we have that many staff members out.
Not if not if they only have to quarantine for 5 days instead of 10.
But that's a game changer.
It's
When we
total
started
game
talking
changer.
about this,
Yep.
we were talking about 10s and 20s,
Right.
not 5s and 10s.
Mhm.
And so we're trying to figure out a way to, in an emergency, when we're looking at that many staff out,
Yeah.
because, you know,
It
and
won't be for a long time.
it
I
won't. 'Cause
always worry about working parents and the younger kids. It's a lot to ask. And they're already frustrated. They have to leave work to come and get a COVID test. And now they're going to have to find childcare on one day. I was fortunate to stay home, but I would have had to quit my job with my kids to stand over them to do remote.
I don't like saying any of this.
No.
These are dire situations
Okay.
when we've got, you know, if a quarter of our staff are out, it's a way to say a quarter of the staff are out. How do we deploy the workforce that we have, the people who are in?
Mhm.
It's just a strategy to say, if we could get a quarter of the students out selectively so that you free them up, because it doesn't help when a quarter of the students are out and you got checkerboards. They're all out of here, here, and here, and you're trying to run everything.
Right.
Now you start combining within, you're still having the same impact of not doing what you should be doing. So I'm trying to get outside of the box
Interesting.
and to think about it. It's not ideal. I wouldn't I wouldn't come to you and say, I've got a great idea for next year, every Monday the freshmen come home. I wouldn't do that. What I'm saying is, when we're backed in a corner and we're looking at those kind of outages, and with proper noticing, parents will,
Rise to the occasion.
parents will respond on a snow day to find coverage for their kids, right? They have a backup plan, and they get 24 hours notice, sometimes more, sometimes 48. If they're watching the weather, sometimes they get, an hour notice when they get my call because they weren't paying attention, which happens too. People aren't always monitoring the weather like superintendents do.
Or teachers.
It would have to be something that we would have to be very planned about and notice about. To
Super
everybody.
emergency mode. Super
No.
emergency. Yeah.
I'm talking
Code red.
code red backed in a corner.
All the teachers that are
Shut-
guidance counselors are in classroom. Corey's out doing recess duty.
At what point does that hit? Like CHS had 8 staff out.
So it depends on
I
who
mean-
it depends on who
Who's
they
out.
are.
Are they lunch
If
ladies?
it's-
Are they paras?
Exactly.
Liz, I've subbed in.
I know. You can do it.
I've
You can do it.
all through GMS.
When I volunteered at GMS that day, Maura was a Mrs. Elliott. She was a kindergarten teacher for the day because they had gone that deep into their sub list that literally the assistant principal was a classroom teacher for the day. And so that was before, and now I'm seeing 19 staff out at GMS right now. Total staff absent, 19. 7 positive staff. I mean,
Is that today?
that's today.
Where's that?
That's 20%,
January.
I
right?
see
Yeah.
7.
7 out positive with
With
COVID,
positive, but
19
total
staff.
staff absent,
right,
19.
right. Yeah.
So I mean, it doesn't mean that they're sick. It
Yeah.
means that they're absent. But I mean, if we literally have 20 out of our, making it a rough number, about 100 staff. I remember from doing luncheons for PTO,
Right.
but about 100 staff. I mean, that's 20% of our workforce out at GMS for the last 2 days. I mean, that has to be having an impact on, unless, like you said, Liz, it's the lunch people and certain paras. But again, I
that
have to
shuts things
wonder.
down when the lunch isn't working. It's-
Right,
yeah.
or kids not getting the services they need. At some point, I do think we are in a position, at least at GMS. LMS, it's 10 out, and CHS 8. I don't know if their building staff sizes are the same.
So the key thing is who that is.
Right.
I'm talking about classroom teachers.
This isn't all COVID. They might have the flu. They might have the virus.
But they're
this-
absent.
yeah.
So, I mean,
Right.
whether it's COVID or not, if we
Right.
have a quarter of our staff out,
Well,
and depending on who they are, like you said, if it's
Right.
elementary classroom teachers, then we need to make accommodations.
I mean, do you need a board vote on this, or this is something I feel like falls under your discretion as superintendent in the sense that you have a much better sense of this, you and the building administrators have a much better sense of who is out and what the situation is.
So I don't know that we need a vote on it. What I wanted to do was 2 things. I've explained it to Dan and Maura and asked them to think about it. I've explained it to Jen and I've explained it to Bill. They were intrigued, like, oh, I see the point of freeing this amount of staff up so we can deploy them here. That's
I'm intrigued, I
plus,
guess is
right?
the right word. Like,
Um,
Right.
they don't like the idea that we're taking away, that we're shortening. We're not at 180, we're at 179 if we do it. But you go to 179 for every kid and you buy yourself a week if you strategically, work it across the week. So you're taking 1 day away, but gaining a week of open, right? Versus we go remote. What's the value of that? What's the value of remote when if you
older
have staff members
siblings
who
are
are,
home to watch their younger siblings.
this is true.
Right.
You also need to consider now we're going to pay the LEA for not working.
Say that again.
Now we're going to pay the LEA for not working.
No, because they're going
No,
to be
but teachers
Teachers
are
are
deployed.
still
redeployed.
They'll be there, but they're going to work less days because if we go to an hours base, that if it ends up being 178 days, they're not going to work those other 2.
They'll work 180 days. The students will only have learning 179 by selective outage of who's not there. But the staff are going to work 5 days that week,
Yep.
but the students will be out in staggered waves, right? So yes, I hear you,
So how
but
many
no.
days does this give us? 9? Does that no?
Of hours?
Well, yeah. How many
Yeah.
extra days does this give us per grade? This type of strategy. You know what I mean? Like how many days can a particular grade take off and still meet the hours necessary?
I have to get you that exact calculation, but I think we have 13 days in our back pocket.
Not 7 and 8.
Yes, because we added half an
We
hour. in
added
the
a half
school
an
year.
hour.
So
So,
that 13 days.
well, let me double check the math on it, Brian. But I think we picked up
Mhm.
a half an hour a day times 180 days. We actually had a huge leap in.
Well, that would actually
in
make an
LMS.
impact.
So,
But we're not our knowledge. But we could be.
Okay.
so conceptually, I just wanted the board to hear
I'm
that.
intrigued by
And my other strategy was to say it out loud on TV tonight because
right.
this is not something that's gonna be easy to communicate in an email.
Well, and I'm sure
And-
you'll hear feedback.
I'm sure we will. And I solicit the feedback
Yeah, I
because
think that's good to hear.
I don't want to say scrambling's not the right word. It's like people say, think outside of the box, how to keep it going. This is an outside of the box way of thinking
Yeah.
about school that does everything I think we can do. And,
After doing everything possible to,
I
to
just,
do what we can do.
if we get to the point that we're just putting 3 classes in an auditorium,
That's not
it's
learning.
not learning either. So
Yeah.
frankly, the day off is almost better. I hate to say it,
Mm.
but it's
Is
like a
there-
day off.
I'm asking this out loud simply because I don't know when someone brought up changing buildings, but is there a way to have it be the elementary grades are the last options of the ones that are out? So there isn't a first grade class out. The high school 9 and 10 are out, and those teachers shift down to GMS to be able to allow the elementary school to function fully for the day, but 9 and 10 are out, which are more responsible, can stay home alone. I'm just thinking of the childcare issue. I'm throwing it out there as a thought. But would that
Did you say they couldn't
breach the
couldn't
contract?
move to a different school? Right.
They're teachers. They are. Their contracts are specific to the building and the assignment, but that would involve us having a conversation with the association, but
Yeah.
none of us have ever had to do this. So
Right.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued by that thought. So
I'm
that's,
just thinking out loud in terms of the childcare situation. If that is going to be a real drawback to certain families needing, their kids to be in school and not being able to do that, I almost would rather have 9 and 10, which are a lot more able to do work online and
they're more independent.
more independent versus.
I think it's an
You
idea
can do that.
worth.
Then 11 and 12 is better because they can drive.
Sure.
I think it's an idea worth workshopping for lack of a better word, but hash it out, get around a table and the pros and cons and what if you do this, can you do this? But I don't think we need to do that here.
No,
But
I
I
don't want to workshop it if the board is like, don't even think about it, but I'm not hearing don't even think about
I
it.
think
I'm
we
hearing-
have to. I mean, with 20% of the staff out,
Yeah.
there's got to.
or you shut everything down and it's
I know. Yeah.
then you make
It's
it up
going
at
to
the
be a
end of
worse
the year.
solution
Right.
if we don't.
You might be in a lot better shape too if what we're saying the governor said is 5.
Right.
Then that,
Right.
Like
Yeah.
Dr. Jetty said, it's a game changer, and
Yep.
you just don't have to worry about it.
Asymptomatic though.
Right.
You can't.
But
So-
I would go ahead and workshop it and
Yep.
and see what challenges are there and if there's a workaround.
Yeah.
I mean our goal is to have meaningful education in person.
I think there should be a backup plan and a backup plan to
Oh,
the
yeah.
backup
Right.
plan. So
Multiple
that's another
backup
backup
plans.
plan to
We're
the
already
backup
about 2
plan.
or 3 backup plans deep. at this point, so
I mean,
Right.
everybody keeps saying they, want to get back to normal. So do I.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure what that's going to be at this
It's-
point.
yeah.
So
But you know what? It
anyway.
really struck me that Emily said she's never been to an event at Campbell where all the students were there. She was a freshman when this all started, like my second son.
Yep.
She doesn't know what it's like when everybody goes to a football game or to have pep rallies dressed in all white, gray, and black.
Yep.
It's really sad.
That is
Yep.
sad.
it's going to be a very life altering experience for a lot of people, and it'll be very, as the psychology geek in me is like, ooh, this will be interesting to see how this plays out, but it's
Really
just
get the cove.
I hate having to go through it still, like we all
Really
do.
get cove and then have to
So
go.
that's what I had for you on coronavirus. We're meeting with our team tomorrow on COVID numbers. I'll give them this feedback, generate that idea.
It's like a rolling blackout.
Yeah, the commissioner in his call with the superintendents on Monday made it clear that the last thing you want to do is shut a school down. You have to be strategic and targeted in the way you do this. And I thought that's the conversation we're having, is how do we strategically deploy our workforce and impact the fewest students possible at the same time? That's what we're trying to figure out. But he said, you have to understand, schools are not daycare centers, but you serve an important function so that families can continue to work, and we cannot keep shutting the economy down. So you need
Some
to
kids need
find
to eat,
a
too.
way. And so
Yeah.
here we are. That's what we're trying to do, is stay open and provide provide the entire community an opportunity to keep getting back to normal while still facing these terrible
Crazy
numbers.
numbers.
So
If we do
crazy.
shut down, I'm assuming food services could help out
Mm-hmm.
with the students that are home on a particular day and prepare that in advance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we could figure that out.
You want food service go like what, babysit boys or?
No,
just feed
just
them.
if like, fifth
we did to-go
graders are,
meals
are
and-
off on Monday, give them lunch, give them lunch on Friday to take home and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Bag lunches that we have before.
Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to the manifest. Any
All
questions? All set? Thank you. And now public input. Thanks for sticking it out.
Oh,
Yeah, right.
This is nothing. It's not even 8 yet.
You just jinxed it.
I know.
8:30, we're out of here.
have a yogurt at the dinner.
That's why we have to be out at 8:30. You want to make sure you understand.
Yes.
Did you?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
I never-
Just a reminder, so you'll state your name and address, and I have to limit you to 3 minutes. Yeah, so
I
if,
assumed I did because you're kind of running over the agenda, so I kind of
yeah,
assumed.
we
but,
usually do. But if you have anything else to add, we can certainly take a statement, or you can meet with
I'll
Dr. Jetty. And,
send an email or
Okay,
something.
thank
try and
you.
meet with people, but, all right. My name is Curtis Sampson. I live at 12 Garden Drive. I've got 3 children that are in the school system, 1 in LMS and 2 are in GMS. I am an active member in the community. I'm with the Scout program. I'm with the I'm on the planning board. So I have an active role in the community here and an active interest. I know a lot of you have seen my comments on social media. I know that the way I addressed that probably wasn't the most productive. But at the time of the event, there was not a lot of information coming out. I want to premise this by saying that things I'm going to say right now might come off as personal attacks. They're not meant to be. I'm concerned about the actual plan that's in place. I'm concerned that we're using RSA 91.3 to say that we can't give any information out to the general public. I do not think that you should tell people where their children are going to go if you have to go to a safe refuge area. I absolutely agree with that. I don't think that you should leave parents in the dark as to how they have to play a role in this incident. When I'm notified by back sources that there's an active incident going on at a school, an hour before the school actually says, hey, we've got a problem, that's a concern. You sit there and say that the towers aren't being used because everybody's making phone calls. It's because people don't know what's going on. If you had put a message out to anybody and said, hey, this is what we have going on, please be patient, we're in a lockdown, you wouldn't have had panicked parents taking up the cell phone towers. You would have had them waiting for the next instruction from you guys. You guys are the body that is supposed to tell us what to do in these incidents. If you're not going to share the plan, you have to make sure the plan is solid. And that morning, it didn't seem solid. There was no communication. We got some stuff from some of the principals, but the principals shouldn't be doing this. In this type of a situation, you should have an incident command system. And if that means, Mr. Jett, you're the incident commander, then that's your role. And people will say, well, we got to worry about the kids and the kids were safe. This wasn't a demonstration. This wasn't an exercise. This was a live incident. We shouldn't be finding out during a live incident that we can't communicate to people. There was the notion that we couldn't communicate for 30 minutes from the church. So I'm led to believe that you couldn't talk to the principals, you couldn't talk to the fire chief, you couldn't talk to the police chief because your phone was dead, which I don't believe that. I was there in that area, and I know there's going to be interruptions. I understand that. But the only instruction I got officially from the school was at 9:18, an hour and 18 minutes after I knew what was going on and came back from Boston. And I was told, we've moved the kids. I'll read the exact comment. GMS will be evacuating to Tabernacle Church. Dismissal will begin at 10:15. Now, if I didn't know anything about what was going on, how do you think I'm going to feel reading that? Why are you evacuating? What happened? Are people injured? You caused a panic in the general public because you didn't tell people what was going on. It's 2021. Communications go over dispatches, over police scanners. People hear it. People are going to get it. Do you want them to get bad information through social media, or do you want them to get valid information to calm the panic? There's a reason in the early 90s and late 90s that the national incident management system was put in place. Started in the 70s, but came back in the 90s because of these type of incidents. And to sit there and say that the primary or secondary goal is to make sure the kids are safe, I understand that. The teachers did a great job. They did what they were trained to do. I don't think anybody actually went to this far in the training, which I think is a failure of the plan. You know, I know you do ALICE drills. I know you do the trainings in schools if there's an active shooter in the school, but to not extend it as to what happens when we go past that, you've failed the plan. It's, you know, and to sit here and hear everybody say, hey, we did a really great job. I think you did for something that would have been an exercise. But in a live situation, there were parents, we just mentioned it here, that went to the schools during a lockdown and were allowed to take their kids out of school. That completely defeats the purpose of a lockdown. You're allowing kids to leave a school. You're allowing faculty that are supposed to be making sure kids are getting to a safe location. You're distracting them from their job. That's not a job well done. The plan failed there. And I'm not saying that the teachers failed. I think the teachers did the best they could. I think everybody did the best they could, but I think there were some things in the plan that failed. To sit here and say that we're not using the new emergency communication towers because we haven't done that yet, that's a failure. That's not okay. Those were put in place because we knew as a town that you couldn't communicate in town. There's a reason they were put up, because there's a failure to get cell phone and email services. That's why they were put in place. They've been in place, I think, for months now, right? The fire department's using them. We have a management system. Why would we find out during an active incident that we're not using these towers? That's a failure to plan. I'm not critical of anybody here, and I understand, but to sit there and say that a group from this board, which I'm not sure of people's qualifications, I don't know if the town knows what people's qualifications are. The fire chief and the police chief, who we know are qualified, put a plan together and are now reviewing that plan. To sit there and say, well, we can identify what isn't in the plan is kind of naive. Because if I write up a plan and then I activate this plan and then I review my own plan, I'm going to see what I want to see. I'm only going to see blinders because I don't know other experience. I haven't experienced this stuff. So for the board to not reach out and to say, well, because of RSA 91, we can't share any of this information, I think that's a little ignorant on the part of the board. You should be able to share parts of this information, especially the stuff, what are the parents supposed to do? To tell parents to go to the Tabernacle Church, which I can't say nobody, a lot of people had no clue where this church was. You know, most people thought this church was in Hudson. And to have no other information come out, that's not okay. That's what causes panic. That's what causes the cell towers to be used, because everybody's trying to find out, how do we talk to people? I went on social media and put stuff because I was frustrated. And I know that's not the most productive way to do it, but I can guarantee you there were people that only knew what was going on with this incident because of those posts. Doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong. But that's not how people should find out about these incidents. And as a board, you should really be sitting and looking at this. This wasn't a drill. This was an active incident. We shouldn't be finding out these things in an active incident. You're meeting every Friday, or once a month, as you said. You're meeting once a month with a group of people. Has there been a consulting group to come in and review what happened on the 17th? Or has it just been the board, the people that built the plan? Have they been the ones who reviewed it? And I'm not questioning anybody's qualifications because I don't know anybody here personally. But if you are not qualified to build this plan, to review this plan, how can you review what happened on the 17th and say we did a good job or we did a bad job?
Can I just, do you want to respond to that?
No.
Oh, okay.
I think what we should do is, the time is up.
Yeah.
And I'd be more than happy. I've reached out to Mr. Sampson.
Okay.
The first I heard of his concerns was yesterday.
Oh.
I'm not on social media. I don't read that stuff. I don't have time for that. So what I'd like to do is have an opportunity to sit down with him. I'd be more than happy outside of a board meeting to engage in however long it takes to answer questions and have dialogue about
I
it.
think Dr. Jetty, is the one to answer those questions.
Yeah, and I
Most of
did
them.
see your call yesterday. I tried calling you back, but
Those are
What
valid
is the
concerns.
plan?
I think
I
we
think-
all.
They
yes,
are,
right.
but this is not the
Yep.
forum to get into
Yeah.
it.
Right.
So, yeah.
So yeah.
So I'd like to follow. I'll follow up. I'll schedule a meeting with you, whatever works.
sure.
for you.
And I know Ms. Flynn has my email because we were going back and
Great.
forth the past couple
And
days.
if you
So
want to email suggestions, your take on it is certainly very helpful. all the feedback that we received was very helpful in adapting and moving forward. So I appreciate.
And again, like I said, I'm not trying to be critical of people individually. I think that Friday we failed with the plan, and I think things went great because it wasn't a live incident. If it were a real live incident, allowing people to come down to a lockdown just adds more potential victims. It creates chaos, and so.
I think we all had different experiences on that day too. You had a different experience than I had because I only had one child at CHS. I think about that.
Right.
Well, I appreciate
But
your
thank you.
concerns.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank
for your
you.
comments.
Thank you.
Well, I know what your face looks like.
Yeah.
I'll wave to you at the dump now. This will go to the dump.
Hello, everyone. How is everybody doing? Good? Hope everybody had a happy new year and a nice Christmas and stuff. My name is Kevin Oviello. I'm from 6 Nathan Drive. I have 2 children in the school. I have one in GMS and one in LMS. First of all, the situation happened December 17th. Staff, phenomenal. Kids, above phenomenal. The way they handle it. Communication, well, as the gentleman was just talking about, myself and my wife were the ones did not get any communication for either child, which can be concerning considering we thought our child was on a field trip and we get nothing. So my question is like, what software program that you use? Because I use one for my business, and you don't need cell towers because it's internet driven. If you have something that you can draw from, like from the fire department or whatever it may be, I can get into that. How good of a qualification of a software do you have? Because that's where the glitch is. Because like I got you 2-hour delay, but I didn't get anybody's text. Makes no sense, right?
Yeah.
If I'm getting the phone call, I get your email.
Did you get my text today?
No,
Because you didn't opt into texting.
at the beginning I did.
You,
We filled out all that information
you have to opt into it annually,
every year.
every year.
Yeah, the form and all that stuff and online. We've done it twice.
Yeah. Because otherwise, everybody who opted in got a text today.
So you know everybody that's guaranteed to get a
There are
text.
895 people who have opted into texting. There are 3,000 recipients for email in the system.
So what's the best way for somebody? What's the good way for somebody to find out if they have opted in?
Yeah, how do you find that out?
Ask me the question, I'll go back and take a look, because there'll be a
Okay.
paper trail in the system that shows they opted in for texting on this date.
Tara, can you post that on
Is it
Facebook?
is that online or is that the form that they make you fill out?
It's,
Because
you get the one-time text and you have to respond to that text.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
And so I'll go
Neither
back-
one of us.
I'll go back and check that.
Yeah.
But I can just tell you, today's message, IT, so I asked for that message to be sent out on my behalf because I was not in a position to do it. And IT said, you sure you want a text to go? Because that's only 895 people. If I send an email, it's 3,000. I said, do both. Because
So is
a
this
third of the people
Today
have
at
opted into
1:12.
texting.
So here's the question then, is the form together? Because why would you have 2 separate things? Because if I do it, I
So-
don't have my team.
Because the FCC regulations state that we are not allowed to send you text messages unless you approve of that.
That's not the question I'm asking. I'm asking when you fill out the form at the beginning of the year.
Yep.
You fill out that form, they ask for the cell phone, ask for the email.
Yep.
Does that not all coincide together?
No.
How come it doesn't do that?
That goes into
'Cause
our
what-
system. So that's how
Yep.
we have 3,000. I mean, think about it. We have 1,200 kids, right? We have 3,000 emails that go out every time we send something.
Sure.
So that's mom, dad, whatever,
For email.
emergencies, etc. So that's how you get from 1,200 kids. Oh, well, that includes staff too, right? So that's the 3,000.
Okay.
Then we send a one-time text. You have to respond to that text in order to agree to receive annual text notices. That's an FCC regulation. It's a federal law. If you do not respond to that text, then you are not in our system as receiving text. We still have your cell number. We can call you, but we cannot text you unless you
Because it's a
agree to it.
separate form. So you have 2 different ways you have to do a form. So you have to do an email form and a
So you
texting
have
form?
to, yeah, we'd have to send you a text and you reply to that text and then you're opted in.
Right.
To keep getting.
And that's
texts.
because of
FCC regulations.
Yeah.
So for a program like that?
Yeah.
That's.
Let me send you the communication when it
Sure.
went out and,
Because if you
but
only
it's-
have 800 and you have 3,000,
Yeah.
that would be a
That's
red
good
flag.
point.
And maybe communicate more.
Or not, or not. There could be people who say, I don't want you texting me. I don't want to be
Well,
bothered.
true, but you don't know that until you communicate.
Right.
That's why we send the one time you have to respond to this.
Yeah, but again, like I said,
Or we
I'm
can't
telling
text
you, I deal with business all the time. My business is phone. I never received any text. Why do I get a cell phone call but not a text? Is that a different system?
Yes.
So there's three different systems going on. So you got a phone system, you got a texting system, you got an email system.
There's no
Because-
FCC regulation about me calling you, right? Because that doesn't, I guess the assumption is it doesn't result in charges. I don't know why this texting law exists, but in order to text you, you have to agree, you have to opt in. It's not even oh, get me out of here, I want to opt out. You have to opt into texting.
So I had to go on. So
I
that's
had to
in-
write yes and send
But
it
how
to
did you get
this.
that text though?
Is that the message?
Yeah.
When
How
was
do you
it?
get it?
When
Do
was
you go to
sent?
a website and do it?
No.
No, because the cell phone
cell phone-
number is in the contacts.
That's
in
what I'm trying to
our
say. So my
source.
cell phone's on
So I texted
if I don't get the
if
if I don't get the text generally,
So I texted 67587 and said yes, and then it said you're registered for school messenger notifications.
so how do you know that though?
Because you were sent,
What I did.
he texted everybody one,
Put in a
we're
cell phone.
Instructions,
allowed.
and I'll put it on our Facebook
Can-
page.
Well, I mean
Send out
that's
another text.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, we
Opt in?
can't.
Oh, we
can't.
can't.
It's only
Only
once a
one
year.
done?
One text
Oh,
to ask
Once a
you,
year.
one
Yeah.
by law,
right.
and we sent it.
My question is that so you're saying that you had to personally type it in? I'm trying to so you're trying to tell me that you had to type in to get that.
I
Yeah, but how
wrote-
did you know about that?
Because they sent out a letter back in April.
So it was a letter, it wasn't an email.
Well, you also got a text,
I
right?
also got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had your cell phone in, so it automatically sent it to a cell phone, the text?
All right.
I know I'm getting.
I got
confused.
mine.
I'm
I got
confused, that's
mine
why I'm
April
asking.
2nd, Wednesday, April 7th.
Yeah, mine was the
April
8th.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
So I'm part of the same group. The message that I just
What,
read you.
what is that? 6-7?
It's 67587. So I'm part of that group. The text message I got from the December 17th incident came over on my phone. I got nothing about today from the incident text message you're saying on
I
my
got
phone.
Then it says
I got
roads, two of them, one at 10:28 and then one at 12:58.
So this is the exact
But mine came
line.
at 10:42 and 1:12, so it must send it in waves.
I still haven't gotten it at all though.
Yeah.
So my concern is maybe the system's not working as intended.
Because I have a software. it
But
goes
wait a
all at
second.
once.
You're triggering it to be the system versus the fact that your carrier could be the other issue. You know, I will tell you, the
Verizon.
system
I have
pushed it
Verizon.
I
out.
have Verizon. We got it at
And,
the same
you know,
time.
I got it at 10:28 and 12:58.
yeah, me too.
So they went out.
Yeah.
So you have
Why it's
Verizon,
not going to you,
Yeah.
I will look
I have
into that, because
Verizon.
what I can do is there's a literally I can look at all 3,000 emails. When was it sent? When was it received? When was the phone call answered? Was the phone call, did it go to voicemail? All of that gets captured. So if
on
you're
the
having a
software.
concern with it, I will dig into it. I'm not going to
Yeah.
do it now.
No,
I will
I'm
get
not.
you an answer as to why.
My question is because my software that I
Yeah.
use for my business, you can put everybody on that one
Right.
system. You can either text, email, or call with one button.
Yeah,
Well, and I-
Messenger's set up the same.
That's all.
The
I
same
think
way.
as part
Yeah.
of debriefing,
Text in,
another
Yeah,
reminder
exactly.
about this
My question was just,
opt-in.
I didn't get
Yep.
notified.
But
I have Sprint.
But we have to be
Same
clear,
thing.
you know, we have to follow the regulations on it, right?
Yeah, and I understand that tremendously. It's not a big, I'm just saying that I didn't get,
And I
you didn't
got
get
email.
either one of them.
I will look into it, Kevin, and get you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So
Is there a way that Tarek, like, is there a way to opt in
No.
without getting the text?
Yes.
first?
Yes, you
You
just
just-
literally write yes
And we
to
have
the
sent that
67587.
repeatedly
Okay.
in notices, but we'll do it
Okay.
again.
Yep.
So all you have to do is, we are allowed to send you one text a year. And it looks like we have to wait till April to send another, because that's the
Huh.
last time we sent one.
Yeah.
And we can say, to opt in, just reply yes to this text.
Yeah.
Can we
Okay.
send an email saying it's coming?
And then we have
Text is
sent
coming?
notices.
That did
It's,
go out.
it's all in there that says, or you can opt in yourself by just doing the following.
Or
So-
type
That's,
in. Yeah.
that's easier. to
Yeah, it is
opt in.
easier.
Yeah.
Well, that allows
Type
you to do it at
in.
any time versus responding to our
Right,
push.
right.
Why?
You get one push.
To
Why? Yeah, I did.
Can we do that in the principal newsletters on Friday, maybe? Thank you.
yeah, or send out an email and just say click on it. 'cause that's
It'll
what
be
I
in the
do.
principal's emails this week.
Yeah, because that'd be an easier way.
Yep.
Well, I didn't expect it to go that far. I just wanted to know what software you had. So that's all, that was my question. But I have a real big concern for my second child. And I want to show everybody this. I hope you all know what this is.
I don't.
I know what
Well,
it
this is what a teacher gave my son.
Green slip.
It's called a demerit.
Okay.
You know what the demerit's for?
Not wearing his mask the right way.
For not putting his mask over his nose.
How many do they hand out a day?
So that person. So I asked.
I'm sorry.
It's a great question to ask, and that teacher told me she only gave out 3.
It's
Sorry,
not signed
yeah.
by the teacher.
And yes, that's the other thing. The teacher did not sign it.
Right.
So my kid, and a lot of you know who my child is a very upstanding kid, very good, works in the community and so forth. And he didn't want to come to school, and he hasn't been in school for a while because of this incident. Okay, because he didn't have a mask over his nose. One teacher told him, "Well, you should tape your mask over your nose." You know, and the interesting part is that I went to the awards night. You were at the awards night. And I didn't see everybody wearing masks that night. Anybody get reprimanded for it? Anybody get a demerit for it?
What
No.
school? Can I just ask what school this is?
This is the middle school.
The middle school.
And
Okay.
when was the awards night?
It was just prior to the it was during the new mask mandate. And I'm what I'm here. So I had a conversation with the teacher and the assistant principal. And the situation happened. I had a conversation. You know what blew my mind is I walked into that facility, and in the office, no one's wearing masks. Okay. Now I'm not here to rat people out, but if my kid's gonna have to get in trouble with wearing a mask over their nose. And the great thing part about it is the woman came out to me and asked me, "Would you like a mask, sir?" Because I didn't go in with a mask on. I refused to at the time because it's getting petty about putting a mask over your nose. What's next? Is he going to get suspended if he doesn't wash his hands correctly? And I asked that question to the assistant principal. The assistant principal answered me this way. Well, we don't have that on the list, so you don't have to worry about it. Is this where we're coming to with this mask? Because I know a lot of you don't wear your mask all the time when you go everywhere. And it's time for these kids to be able to be maskless. Or please give an option for people that don't want to. Vaccinations going from 5 years old all the way to high school. There's booster shots. There's vaccinations going on everywhere. And people are still getting infected. Where does it end? And by the way, on top of that too, the para that was in that class, you know what that para did to my son because didn't have his mask over his nose? Did this. You put your mask over your nose. Is that where we're going with Mr. Jetty, Dr. Jetty? Is that how the teachers are supposed to be with these kids? It's bad enough they're stressed out as it is. And listen, I'm all for teachers. I do a lot for this town, but I'm done. I'm done with this, okay? Because now it's getting personal with me, and I'm getting upset. I'll make it my mission, okay, to make sure that the situation gets resolved. Give an option to all these kids to not to wear the mask anymore. They want to wear it. Because you all know you guys go on vacations, you guys go places to Florida, wherever you went, and go from there. I'm sorry, I'm heated. I apologize.
It's all right.
I'll
I just
comment
have to
that.
cut you off.
Yeah.
Thank you for your input.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else for public input?
Yeah, I just have one thing. This one, Deb Leary's communication that she sent. She texted during the meeting saying that she appreciated the fact that I gave some tidbits from her thing, but says I missed the point and asked if the next meeting if I could read it. So I'd rather just read it
You
now.
can just read it now. Liz, you didn't get it because she
Because
sent
it's
it to
put
L.
L.
McDonald.
McDonald. E.
Yeah.
McDonald.
Yeah.
That's not my fault. So L. McDonald's getting it.
Yeah.
So she did send it to the board.
Yeah, I
She
just saw
intended
it
to send
here.
it to the
Okay.
board. Yeah.
So again, this is from Deb Leary on Monday, January 3rd. So good evening, Litchfield School Board members. I'd like to ask you to please take action regarding protocols currently set in place for household COVID contacts. It seems that if someone has COVID in your household and you are not vaccinated, you must quarantine. If the same situation exists and you are vaccinated, you get a free pass to work and or attend school. I think we all know that vaccinated employees and students have spread COVID in the buildings. It has happened. I would ask that you become the critical, independent thinkers you encourage students in our district to be and take a look at this. It is not helping the situation. A household contact is a household contact capable of spreading the virus, regardless of vaccination status. Be leaders, not followers, and quarantine household contacts regardless. What do we think we're getting here? Thank you for your consideration of this sensitive matter.
Thank you. And with that,
There's nobody in the call.
okay. So we'll close public input And I will accept a motion to move into non-public session. According to, I just closed that window. Shoot. RSA 91. Sorry, guys. Here we go.
You don't have to read it.
Thank you. Have a good
Night,
night.
thank
you.
You don't have to
Thank
read
you.
it.
Thank you for coming
You
in.
don't have to read the whole thing. You could just say what RSA you go.
Oh, according to RSA 91-A311, parentheses A through C, due to a discussion of staff issues and sensitive information.
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Yes.
Liz? Yes.
Yes.
Heidi? Yes. I'm a yes as well. That brings us to non-public. Thank you. Have a good night.